Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace, episode 295 on Sifted Games at sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield, your humble host for the next couple hours of video game discussion, and alongside me, I have my cohort, Matthew Kyle. What's going on, Matt?
Not much. Back from Arizona.
Yeah, you had a big weekend this weekend, right?
Yeah, we went to premiere one of the short films at the Phoenix Film Festival, which is good. Yeah, we got it done and did our Q&As and such. It is still going on, but we didn't want to stay for 10 days in Phoenix.
It's 10 days?
Yeah, the first weekend's a lot of short films, international stuff, and then they do a lot of the features next weekend. Mm-hmm. So our short is actually playing Friday and Sunday still at Phoenix, but we're not.
And you're not going to be there,
which is fine. I mean, but yeah, it's went okay. It's the first time we'd shown it to people who didn't work on it. So it's
how did that feel?
It was good. People reacted well.
Were you really nervous about it?
No. I've shown my work to people a lot.
Yeah.
These years,
I mean, working in the industry we've worked in, you're used to it, but still, there's got to be at least a little bit of butterflies, right?
No, not really. I mean, we made what we made.
Are you happy with it? How it came out ultimately?
Yeah, I'm happy with it. It's not of the two. The other one is kind of more mine. I helped write that with the other one and was more involved in that. This was Brian, the director's kind of pet project. It's the tango film.
Oh yeah,
Cabaseo. But a lot of people liked it in the sense that it was different. Like a lot of the other shorts, certainly in our block, were very, very heavy material, and suddenly
15 minutes of gloom and doom.
Yeah, suddenly it was just like, oh, they're just going to do a tango. Cool. And, and a lot of people said they thought it was refreshing to see that, and one guy was super. He's like, oh my god, when the rhythm started on the thing, I was like, oh, are they gonna do it? Are they gonna do it? They're doing it! He's very excited. It turned out to be a tango
movie. That make you feel
movie.
Good.
So it was good, and we met up with a bunch of cool people that directed the other shorts, and one guy, this Italian guy, directed one of the features we saw, the Grand Bolero, who was really nice. Mm-hmm. That movie was really good. If you can find the Grand Bolero, it's a Italian film about people restoring and maintaining a pipe organ in a church in Italy, like a 5,000 pipe organ.
Oh wow!
And they recorded all the stuff actually there, and they put microphones inside the pipe organ and recorded everything that way, and it was all played on site and stuff. It was very very impressive stuff. And it's all set during the pandemic, so it's like,
oh wow,
it's like the first movie I've seen where it uses the idea that everybody has to be locked into the same place they started in as a plot point of why no one can get away from each other.
Oh, interesting.
So that was fun. Yeah. And,
congratulations, that's a big
thanks.
Milestone, man.
And they are doing it's called it's like an audience award called a Donor's Choice. So if you want, you can go to the Phoenix Film Festival website, and if you go to the Donor's Choice section, and you can vote for Cabaseo for $1 per vote.
You have to pay for the vote?
It's a donation to the film festival.
Oh, okay, that's kind of cool.
You can, if you want to flood the ballot box with 100 votes, you can just pay $100. So.
What's the name of your film again, just to make sure people get it right?
Cabaseo.
Cabaseo.
Cabeceo. It's Spanish. It's an Argentine tango slang for it literally means head nod, but what it means in tango slang is when you see someone across the room you want to dance with, and you do that head nod at them, and if they nod back, it's on. That's what that means.
Cool.
So originally it was titled 3-Minute Romance, but it ended up being 8.5 minutes long, so we couldn't call it that anymore.
You didn't want to change it to 8.5 minutes.
8.5 minute romance is a little less.
People might remember that though.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
People do remember this one. It's just more of that thing. What was the C one? The tank. Yeah, It's the one that no one can remember, which is almost.
But they do remember.
Yeah, you remember it, but you don't rember the title. But then it's fun. It's also fun because you get to teach someone that little tango fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it, and the other one will probably be premiering pretty soon as well. But we have to finish it. We got some visual effects that aren't done yet.
Oh well, I'm very proud of you, Matt.
And we're gonna be in that one. So.
Yeah,
because the one of the visual effects is the background of the bar has a TV in it that plays a role in the plot, but we need stuff rolling in the TV, and originally we were going to use the dance film. We're going to finish the dance film, cut it in there. We put it in there, and we're like, the only thing anyone's looking at is the dance film because it's colorful and rapidly cut, and it's tons of movement. So you're not looking at the foreground actors; you're looking what's back there. And we couldn't.
So you had to put something boring in there, so
right?
Slid GameFace in there.
And we tried raw footage of it. It was still too kinetic, and we're like, what can we do that's free? And I'm like, why don't we just use footage of our podcast?
Yeah.
It's just me and Shane talking to each other, and it's supposed to be a news channel at the end of the movie. So like it would make sense just to have two talking heads sort of going back and forth on it. And so we put that in, and it was like, perfect.
That works.
I don't care what's happening back there.
That's hilarious. So. Well, I'm glad you guys care. We got a bunch of people in our chat. Cinetike giving us a bunch of bits already. Thanks, guys. That's awesome. And again, congratulations, Matt. I'm really proud of you. I know you're downplaying it. To me, I feel like it's a really big deal that you've done this. So
yeah, I mean, it's just like we shot it 2 years ago, and it just feels I'm so used to it existing by now. It's just like we'll see, and we'll see where it goes.
To me, it's a big deal. Yeah. So congrats, man. Let's see what's going on for housekeeping this week before we get going. We need Pact or Factor questions. It's everywhere right now. You can find it on our Twitter feed at twitter.com/SiftedGames. You can find it on Sifted. It's on the homepage right now. You can find it on our Patreon at patreon.com/Sifted. And if you are not a patron and you don't go to Sifted, you can also find the call for questions at youtube.com/SiftedGames. And then just click the community tab and you can ask questions there. You can also just reply to our tweet that we sent out. There's a million ways to do it. We're shooting on Thursday, so we got about a day and a half to get those questions in before we go and shoot the episodes with Pactor. So please do that. Second of all, some people have reached out to me saying that they've had problems with Patreon. I don't know if this is unique to us. I don't think it is. But
it seems to be something that happened in Europe.
Yeah. You know about it too.
Yeah, I saw people complaining about that. Not about us, but like
just
about
in general.
Other things.
Yeah, so that's exactly the complaints that we've got. Some of our European patrons, their account or their charges did not go through. Mm-hmm. And then they reached out to their banks or their credit card companies in Europe. And basically, some credit card companies in Europe have deemed Patreon to be unsafe and would not allow the charges to go through. I personally reached out to Patreon. I was like, what's going on here? And at first, they blew me off. And they're like, every Patreon has people that come and go every month. I'm like, lady, I've been on Patreon for 5 years. I think I know how it works. And I was like, no, you're not getting it. Like, they're saying that some banks in Europe don't trust you guys to process payments. So ultimately, Patreon told me if you are having this issue to contact them. They said at the bottom of any correspondence you get from Patreon, there's a link that says contact. And they said that you should personally reach out to them. There's nothing I can do to help you guys. But it does suck. Like, our Patreon's already, like, really low. And then we lost, like, a ton of people because of this who haven't been able to pay. So we just got our lowest Patreon payout ever this week, or this month, which is really tough. So we are up against it, people. We do need help on our Patreon. I don't want to beg for money. I know I hate when people do that. I hate doing it. But we're kind of at that point. Like, our Patreon is really, really low. And I don't know what's going to change. Like, we launched Good Morning Gaming. Everyone seems to like it, but it doesn't seem like anything we do affects our Patreon other than it just going down. It's really frustrating. If you guys have any tips on things we can do, I have pivoted like 5 times at this point. I don't know what to do. It is what it is, I guess. But if any of you guys watch the stream live on twitch.tv/SiftedGames and you're like, you know, maybe someday I'll contribute, like, now's really the time. I don't know how more overt I can be about it. Like, that's where we're at. Like, we're in trouble. We need help. So if you're watching the show on YouTube or you're watching right now on the stream and you thought, hey, maybe I'll chip in and help those guys at some point, now is the time to do it. I'm not, like, blowing smoke up your butts or anything. I'm just telling you the truth. We need help. So anything you can do would be a huge help. Also, there's always Twitch Prime. Those numbers have also been going down. Like, people aren't doing that anymore. We're just in bad shape. I'm just being honest with you guys. So if you're on YouTube and you can't afford to help us on Patreon, then at least, you know, use your Amazon Prime account to give us a free $2.50 every month. The instructions are in the description. It's very easy and very quick, but you do have to renew it every month. And I know that sucks, but I don't know why Twitch won't change it and let it just auto-renew, but it just refuses to do it. So anyway, just putting that out there. We're in bad shape. We need help. So I'm just putting out a call for help. Lastly, I watched the Halo TV show. They put it up for free on YouTube. And so I slid in there and watched it on YouTube. The first thing I would say is watching it on YouTube was not ideal.
I would imagine not. No.
Because the audio is awful. I could hardly hear what anyone was saying in the show. So I ended up having to, like, flip through 5 different sound modes on my receiver to finally get one that just tried to focus on the voice. And it almost got there, but overall, watching it on YouTube was not ideal.
YouTube is so far behind the curve audio wise, it's astounding. When I first moved in here, the guys were like trying to set up the surround system and the receiver and everything, and they kept like you're trying to use the surround like test thing, and it wouldn't work. It was always in the front. We couldn't get anything. They couldn't get anything rare. And I came over. I'm like, what are you trying? And finally, I look over. I'm like, are you using YouTube? A YouTube copy of the surround test video? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, YouTube doesn't have surround sound, dude. Like you're not getting. It's not getting because you're using. So we hooked it up to a DVD player. Maybe it was a PlayStation 4 actually, and then it was fine. I was like, yeah, YouTube doesn't do that. They exist about in around 2004 audio wise.
You're right, though. I mean, that's pretty much where it's at.
Yeah. But I guess you put Halo up there so people can see it.
Yep. I mean, the idea is you watch episode 1, you get hooked on it, and then you go and pay for Paramount Plus.
Subscribe to Paramount Plus.
Yeah. And that did not work on me.
No. I mean, there's not much on... If you don't want to watch Star Trek, there's not really anything on Paramount Plus.
I'm just saying, like, Halo wasn't good enough for me to want to pay to watch it.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Which is a little disappointing. Because I was hoping kind of it would be.
No.
But it's not bad either.
No, it's fine.
It starts off with a bang. Yeah. I'll say that much.
And then it doesn't.
And then it fades very fast, yeah.
It becomes two people talking in rooms for the rest of the show.
And I kind of understand, because I don't know that action is going to carry a show like that for season after season. Like, you have to build the characters and the repertoire. And
right, but the problem with this is that, like, well, A, the tone's all over the place. And
it is,
B, like... I don't have a lot of reason to care. You know, like they don't get beyond what I've already got built in to care about Halo, which is less than what used to be.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how I'm supposed to take the UNSC stuff. Like,
what's confusing?
Yeah.
It seems like they're the villains, but they're also the good guys.
Yeah, but also like they turn on Master Chief real fast. It's like, oh, okay, he won't assassinate a child.
Right.
Kill him right now.
We're turning the whole army on him.
Kill the thing we've poured billions of dollars into.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason you'd off an asset like that fast.
It felt a little bit like they're trying to, I don't know, draft off of the Mandalorian a little bit.
And there's an element of like, okay, so I guess I'm supposed to side with the colonists because I guess they're right that the UNSC is a bunch of monsters. Because if they'll do that to their own soldier,
right?
What would they do to
me?
Yeah, it's like... So I don't know where they're really going with that. Like, if it's going to be a whole thing where, like, you know, Miranda Keyes realizes that her father... And her father didn't seem too into that either.
No.
It was just that one really angry woman who's, like, part of the council or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know what that really adds. It feels like somebody watched Battlestar too many times and it's just like, well, we need the government to be the antagonist, right? It's just like, okay, I guess, but like that's not really what the story of Halo was. I mean, I can see why they made it very clear they're doing something that is not canon.
Yeah,
to the
it just seems like it's Chief and the sidekick, just like the Mandalorian.
A little bit,
but the sidekick is nowhere near as interesting as the sidekick in the Mandalorian.
I mean, you do need a like early on, I was like, okay, you need a normal person to sort of provide the point of view and sort of bounce Master Chief off them to show, like, well, you know, just from her being around, you have an idea of how powerful he is. You have an idea of what people see the Spartans as. You have an idea of how big he is. You know, like standing next to normal people, that kind of thing. But after a while, I'm like, oh, is she gonna? She's gonna be through the whole show.
Huh? Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a buddy film.
Yeah, she's going to be Robin to his Batman a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We'll see. Because like usually the character that does that in Halo is Cortana.
Right.
But it seems like they're slow burning Cortana in this. So
yeah. I was kind of surprised actually that Cortana wasn't a bigger part of the first episode. But
well, she's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, you see a little hint of it.
Yep. But I enjoyed it. The special effects I thought mostly were good.
Mostly, there's a couple that are just like,
there's a couple that stand out. And I was, as you had mentioned last week, I was surprised at how gory it is.
Yeah, it is very gory.
Yeah.
There's a couple things.
Just limbs going everywhere.
Like, some of it's just like I can't decide. Like that first like kind of like aerial kind of tracking shot down into the colony. It's like parts of it are like, wow, that's really cool, and parts just like, oh no, that's so bad. Like it looks like a cartoon in places, but also in places it looks really great.
It's
in
really
the same
weird.
shot. It's
but like the Covenant weapons, seeing them work.
That'll look good.
And just watching people get evaporated, but you just see like a part of their leg like fly off. Like Some of that stuff was pretty good. I was
they
pretty
do a good
impressed with
job of
parts
making the Covenant feel like a real threat. With their attack on the kids outside of the colony and stuff.
We killed that whole room of kids,
and like and that's really that's like like we're just cutting limbs off here. Like okay, it's an early sort of like this is the show you're watching.
It doesn't pull punches, that's for sure. I mean, it's more gritty than the video games.
And the prophets look really good.
Yeah,
like that's a very good CG character. But then you're dealing. I'm not a huge fan of the whole the Covenant have an in-house human that they've raised.
Right. Yeah.
I'm saying
no, I don't see that happening. Yeah.
Especially because
they could just smash them between their.
Well, especially because it undermines the thing where it's like like the prophets in the games are terrified of the humans because they look like the Forerunners, and they're like, what the hell is this? Like, why are these things around? And it feels like if you have one in-house, it's a little harder to make that kind of paranoia and xenophobia be an element, because that's one of the more compelling elements of the Halo lore is that the Covenant were as afraid of us as we were of them,
right?
Because we were basically proof that their religion was false,
right?
And
I mean, we're aliens, just like to them, just like they were aliens to us.
And I thought it was an interesting,
but
we're aliens to them, but we also look like their gods,
right?
So. That's a problem for them. Like our hands fit in those consoles, whereas theirs don't.
Yeah.
And I mean, And there's also like little things that have always been a problem with Halo, where it's like there is no way a human and a Spartan can hold the same gun.
Yeah, no way.
Like and they're just tossing guns back and forth, and like that.
The gun weighs like 200 pounds.
Yeah, she's holding that rifle, and I'm just like, her hand wouldn't even be able to get around that.
Yeah, to even squeeze the trigger. Yeah.
That would be a solid way of limiting those kinds of weapons, because clearly the Spartans have stronger weapons than what your average person has. That'd be a good. He's like, okay, if you don't have the strength of a Spartan, you can't even pull the trigger.
Yeah,
like, you don't even need a safety on that thing.
Right? Because you couldn't pull it if you wanted to.
The safety is that you are not a 10-foot tall cyborg.
Yep. So anyway, I would not subscribe to Paramount Plus for it.
No,
it's not that good. But
especially if they're going to throw the episodes on YouTube later.
Yeah, I think they probably will.
Yeah.
And they may even just be pirated up there anyway.
Everything.
If you search around.
Absolutely.
But it's free on YouTube right now. You can watch it and check out for yourself.
Borrow a password from your Star Trek fan friend or something. I mean, they're all watching Picard right now, so I'm sure that there's a subscription floating around.
Someone's got it.
You can borrow or visit or something.
We're actually not condoning that, but...
Everybody does it.
So anyway, I think that's it for the housekeeping. I think we're ready to kick off the show proper. We're going to start things today with easily the biggest release of the week, and that is Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. Long delayed. I mean, it's really crazy. I was looking
years and years.
I was looking through like the footage of it on the TriCaster, and like some of the footage goes back all the way to like 2017 or whatever, like the first trailers. So it has been in development for a long time. It's been officially delayed a couple times. I believe they said that they started working on it in 2016 or something like that. So they've actually worked on it like 5 or 6 years at this point. It is a big game. It includes all 3 trilogies, all 9 films, and the game is broken up in such a way that you can choose which trilogy you want to play. Matt, which one did you choose first?
Prequels.
The prequels?
Going in story order.
Yeah.
Also because I figured you would probably pick the originals. So we'd be playing different things.
Yeah, I jumped around, actually. I got it yesterday, and I've jumped around through all 3 of the trilogies. I've played probably the first 3 hours of each one of them at this point. I've spent a lot of time playing to be ready for you guys today for the show, because the game did release today. So it is on store shelves or in your favorite digital spaces right now. What did I choose first, though? I did the same thing. I tried to play them in chronological order, actually.
I mean, it starts on episode 4 when you load it up.
Yeah.
It's got episode 4 selected.
Yeah.
So they know. And it's interesting, like, the people making this, like, I detect more fondness for the originals and the sequels than for the prequels. Even the opening movie leans hard into Last Jedi stuff, which I certainly approve of. But it's interesting to note, and there's a couple of things in there that I'm like, that are references to some fan stuff that are like, oh, you guys are deep in it. You guys are deep in it. So I was pleased with some of that. But yeah, the prequel stuff so far does have a little bit of, certainly the anti-Jar Jar stuff is pronounced
there's some jokes.
Yeah, pronounced to the point that you're like, oh, you guys are still not over this. Like, it's clearly made by people about our age.
Yeah.
Or at least the people calling the shots are our age.
Jar Jar never bothered me as much as he bothered everybody else for some reason.
Jar Jar, I mean, I don't think he's funny, but I also, like, I don't think he's any more or less annoying than C-3PO.
Yeah.
You know, he's just the comedy relief thing I don't care about.
Yeah.
The actual worst thing in episode 1 is Anakin.
Yeah, you're right.
Like the kid is more annoying than anything Jar Jar does.
Yeah. It's hard to go back and watch the kid actor.
Yeah. Yippee!
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's not his fault. He can only do what he's directed to do.
Yeah.
And he was 9 or whatever, and that poor guy, you know, he has a lot of mental health problems, partly because of being bullied his whole life for playing that role.
He really?
Oh yeah, he was in an institution for a while, like schizophrenia, and
Whoa.
like he had a very, very bad time.
I didn't know that.
He was relentlessly mocked by the internet, by his friends, by the people in college. Like they all called him Annie in college. Like he just had a very hard life because of it.
I had no idea.
Same with Ahmed Best, the guy who played Jar Jar. Like his career basically ended. Like it got another. You know, no one would touch him, and he had some real dark places he ended up in because of it. He's doing better now. Like people have kind of come around, and people don't really hate the prequels anymore. Like there's like the kids who grew up with it have grown up, become adults, and love it the way we love the originals. And the same thing's going to happen to the sequels, folks, whether you like them or not.
Because the kids that grew up watching those as their first films and saw those in the theater.
Maybe not Rise of Skywalker. Nobody likes that piece of shit. But it's too bad it's in here, but there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, they're not going to just exclude
you can't
a film.
just ignore episode 9 as much as we try to in real life. It's very ambitious one way or the other.
Oh, this game is crazy ambitious.
I remember I picked up the first of the Kyber bricks, which because they're not gold bricks anymore, they're Kyber bricks.
Yeah.
And it's like 1 out of 1,166.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I see you, Lego.
And you use those bricks to basically level up a skill tree,
upgrade things and stuff. And I don't know why there aren't 1,138. There should have been 1138 because that's the Star Wars number. That's the THX 1138 reference that is in all of them, in all of Lucas's stuff. So yeah, I think they dropped the ball a little bit there. Should have been 1,138 bricks.
I think otherwise, though. I mean, they don't drop too many balls.
No, there's a lot in here.
It's insane how much content is in this game.
Well, there better be after 6 years,
right? It's still impressive though, and it's not even that just there's the content; it's how meticulously it's handled. Now, we're going to get into stuff that they've left out here in a bit, and I'll let you kind of riff on that. But the stuff that they have decided to include, there's so much minutia and little details and nods to fans and little jokes. And the game is legitimately funny. It's probably the funniest game I've played since probably some other Lego game. Whoever the writers are that Traveler's Tales gets to work on this stuff, they're really good. Like, I've laughed out loud at this game like at least 7 times in the last like 20 some hours that I've had the game. Like, I can't think of other games that do that.
I mean, here and there. Trying to think of funny games. There aren't too many funny games.
There aren't.
Really.
Yeah. It's refreshing.
Tiny Tina's trying, but I don't think it's pulling it off.
Yeah, I mean, I've laughed way more times at this and I've spent way more hours with Tiny Tina at that. And there is some pretty good writing in that game too, don't get me wrong. But this is like, to me, a whole other level, and it's smart. And sometimes I wonder, I'm wondering if it took so long to develop this game because they have to pass all of these gags and these jokes through Disney.
I'm sure Lucasfilm has to approve everything, so I'm sure some of that is there.
Because some of the jokes, I'm like, wow, like I'm surprised that like they let it go through. And I'm just wondering if there were conversations where they had to argue and convince Lucas and Disney to let some of the stuff pass through. And maybe that was a reason there was... Because there's just so much of it. Every scene has, like, all these sight gags, funny just one-liners, just physical comedy, all of it. Like...
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to hear some behind-the-scenes... I mean, you never would because nobody wants to talk about that. And it's probably a weird, tenuous relationship as it is because they're owned by Warner Brothers, so weird seeing the Warner Brothers like interactive logo pop up at the beginning of a Star Wars game.
It is, yeah, for sure.
I mean, you can't argue with the results, so it doesn't surprise me that they find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
But and this is gonna probably sell like you wouldn't believe. Like this is pure like hand it to the kids and have a week of peace kind of shit.
Right. Well, there's also co-op that you can play, split screen co-op, which does look a little limiting.
Yeah, it can be, and only one player gets achievements, as I understand it.
And also, I think only one player can actually take part in like the boss fights and some of the other stuff.
Some of the boss fights have sort of set piece things that don't split screen properly. So yeah.
Yeah, I think any boss fight that's a lightsaber fight, only one of the players gets to actually take part in it.
Yeah, because otherwise that would just be chaos.
Yeah.
Because of the way the combat works. The combat is surprisingly intricate.
Yeah.
Like there's combos
it really is.
and like there's like 3 attack buttons that like combo differently and
there are counters
and blocking and
yeah.
aiming, and it's got more to the combat than a lot of like dedicated action games.
It does. I was pleasantly surprised by it. Now the aiming, the auto aim in this is probably the most generous that I've ever had.
Very aggressive.
Yes,
you can turn that down. But
can you?
Yeah, there's a lot of options to mess with that. But like,
I mean, it is snappy.
It is very snappy.
But if you're playing with your 3-year-old or 4-year-old kid, that's what you want.
Yeah, you don't want it to be a real test.
You don't want them flailing around just trying to get their reticle on the enemy and whatnot. Game's pretty violent too.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of old. Like it's clearly made by fans of old school Warner Brothers, like that. The old cartoons where it's just like people got blown up and shook it off and moved. There's
no blood or anything.
No, but it's definitely
lots of people die. I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it can be a little dark in places.
Yeah,
but Star Wars is like that.
It is. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm okay with a kid playing this. Like, I'm not saying it's like gonna scar them for life or anything like that. But there was definitely a couple points where I was like, "Oh, okay." And there's times where just tons of characters just die. They don't really show them dying; they just fly off into space or like whatever. But as an adult, you're like, "Oh, that character just died." Like 5 of them just died. It's definitely something to maybe consider. I don't know. I think most kids will be okay playing it though. But there's the other thing too is like there's multiple ways to do things and to get places. Like this example right here, like you can rebuild these devices. You can choose the one on the left, which will blow open the blast door. You can choose the one on the right that'll put out the fire. Like there's branching paths in the game and kind of different ways to get to the same means to an end. There's puzzles littered throughout everywhere.
Yeah, like hundreds.
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds. Like there's just the stuff that's categorized as puzzles. There's like 712 or something.
Is that true?
In the little like data bank thing you have, there's like 712 puzzles. There's like 110 side quests. There's it's ridiculous. There's literally thousands of things to do in this game.
Yeah. I've been paying really close attention to how they handle animating the actual Lego characters. And because I had talked about how 2K is starting to make Lego sports games, and I wondered how like animation in sports would work, if it would look weird. So I kind of looked to this game to see how they're doing it. And I noticed that they treat some of the stuff that's supposed to be plastic as if it's like cloth.
Yeah, well, they're just squashing and stretching like standard anime. It's like, you just make it stretch to do what you need it to do.
Yeah.
Like a real Lego figure could not lift its helmet up like that.
Right.
Because the arms aren't long enough. So you just stretch them to do it. Like
But I'm talking about like their, I guess their smocks, for lack of a better way to describe it. Like their bodies, like their torsos.
I mean, they've always done that in these
games. I just have never really paid that much attention to it until this game.
Otherwise, they can't animate,
Right. Which was why I was concerned about a sports game.
No, they've done. I think going all the way back to the original Lego Star Wars, like they've
always had some liberties.
They always bend weird.
Yeah,
because otherwise it looks very like they'd be very stiff and it'd be like playing like one of those old Army Men games from 3DO.
Yeah, and then like the detail in this game, like you can zoom in and you can see the little Lego logo pressed into the bricks.
Even there's a close up when Amidala is talking to Boss Nass in episode 1. There's a real huge close up of her, and you can see like wear on the plastic of her head where it's
been moving?
where it's scraped against the body part, because when you turn that piece, it would rub against the and you can see the paint having worn off a little bit.
Yeah,
there.
I can see that if you, as some of these levels, as you play, the bricks start to get dirty.
Yeah.
It's like, and that level of detail goes throughout the whole game. Like, it's just everywhere.
And there's like reflections of the environment in the Lego characters' shiny faces.
Yeah.
And, like, there's a lot of work going on there.
It's impressive. Mm-hmm. And just the pacing of the game, how it just takes you from one scene to the next. And like, I will say this, like, I didn't notice it as much as you did, but the game does truncate things a good bit, because
a little too much. I think it rushes through some stuff a little too much, like to the point. And maybe it's just the prequels. Like, I haven't played the original trilogy yet. Maybe that's a little more complete. But I think being familiar with the fandom and familiar with some of the younger fans' perspectives, like, I think it bleeps over a lot of iconic stuff in the prequels so far. And some of that might just be like, they think most of the stuff you can do is in free play. Like, the story stuff is pretty railroaded. There's places between the missions where you get to roam around and like see if you can solve stuff. But really, to solve stuff, you got to go to the Galaxy free play mode, where it removes all the story stuff and you can switch characters however you want and use everything you've unlocked to see go wherever you want and all that.
And it's just basically a big open area filled with side quests.
Yeah. I mean,
some of the characters you get the quest from I don't think they're even from Star Wars. They're just like generic NPCs.
Yeah, there's some generic, like, I mean, they're clearly dressed like Star Wars characters, but they're not. Yeah, they're not named characters.
Yeah.
But there's tons of that stuff.
Yeah,
and there's other stuff you find organically, and there's it's a lot.
It's a lot. So I believe there's 5 stages for each film.
Maybe.
I think that's how I counted it.
I can't remember if it's 5 or 6.
I think there's 45 total missions in the main campaign, and then stretch across the 9 films.
And some of those are real short. What's interesting to me is like the mission, because I haven't played a Lego game in a long time, but I was more familiar with, the levels are pretty long and involved. And now they're much, much shorter.
Yeah.
Like they're barely 5 minutes in some cases.
They're usually longer than that. Like, by my math, I'm guessing the game is around 18-20 hours long.
If you just burn through everything.
Yeah, if you just go straight through the campaign.
Yeah, if you do everything, it's probably 100 plus.
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine how long it would take to do everything in this game.
But like, at least the Phantom Menace was just like, okay, you fly you pilot the submarine through the. Oh, that was a level. Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Most of them are longer than that, though.
Yeah, but like, the Phantom Menace is a pretty light offering. From what
in general.
There's a pod race.
Yep.
There's the pod race,
which is way better than like the pod racing games that came out back when.
Which is its own level. And then there's the fight with Maul. There's and then there's the space fight. And I think there's one other. I think there's an on foot one in there somewhere. But like, it's fast. It's and episode 2 is a little more involved because there's less vehicle stuff, but the meat of the game is sort of the open areas where you run around and discover stuff. And so maybe that's why some of the story feels so truncated. Like the whole middle 40 minutes of episode 1 takes place in about 2 minutes. And they could have played a little more, just because of how the humor works. They could have played with some of the other scenes that happen in there a little more. Like, I would have liked to seen a little more, like the scene where Palpatine says he's gonna, he's been nominated for Chancellor or whatever and all that, and like, because all through the prequel stuff they do like big nods of like, he's evil, you idiots, like
right.
Like they're talking about who could the Sith Lord be, and he's got like a photo of him with like all the Sith people on the desk, and he's like, oh, who could it? I don't know. It's
There's the Order 67 gag.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
It's just like they could have done more with that. You know? And it's more of a compliment to the writing and their reinterpretation of it that I'd like to see more than like saying like, oh, you were lazy and didn't do enough. It's more like, I think it's just their take on it sustains well enough. They could have stretched it a little bit more and included a few more iconic moments.
Because the pacing is really good.
The pacing
but it's almost too much.
No, it's too much. It's breakneck. It's really too fast.
It doesn't let up. There's not a lot of like downtime in this game.
Yeah, it's faster than the old Lego Star Wars games.
Oh yeah,
like
sure.
It's interesting that it's like and
because they had to fit 9 films into one game this time.
Except like they really didn't, because like each trilogy is basically the content of a full Lego game.
Yeah.
So and I think that's what you expect to some degree.
Yeah.
And it might just be that these games have changed in terms of how they're paced and how they present things, and I don't know that because the last one I think I played in its entirety was probably like Lego Movie 1.
Yeah.
Or maybe Lord of the Rings. I don't. This reminds me of Lord of the Rings the most, or maybe Lego Batman 3. Because it has it has more the open areas that lead you to missions sort of thing. This more pulls you through, and then like the fact that you can travel from planet to planet changes it up too. Especially as you unlock the planets and you can go wherever you want. Like most of the planets you can think of in Star Wars are in this game.
Yeah, there's over 20 different planets.
Yeah. And these are the upgrades. I gotta be honest, like they make you take the first upgrade, the sprint speed thing, just as part of the tutorial. And now I think that the move is to save up 1 million studs and buy the stud multiplier. That's the first.
So you can get more studs.
You get more
because
you don't really get a lot in the story mode. You get more in the free play.
Yeah.
It's easier to find blue ones and stuff and purple ones, but like. Yeah, I'm going for the multipliers first. I think that's my plan.
So the way the upgrades,
I don't find most of the upgrades for the character classes to be particularly interesting.
Well, there's 2 kinds. There's the one upgrade that works across every character that you play as, and there's some that are class specific.
Yeah, the class specific ones. I looked through all those and they all look terrible. like I don't see a use for basically any of them. Yeah. Except a couple that are like you can skip the hacking mini games, and if you do the hacking mini game and don't skip it, you get like 2,500.
Yeah.
2,500 Lego studs, but it was just cool. But part of that is just sort of like right now it feels like, this is going to be a while before feels like you're making real progress. Because I played for a couple hours and pulled back out because I had to take a break, and like it was like you're 2.1% done.
Oh,
I was like, Jesus, like
it's crazy. It's big. There's so much content in this, which I can understand. It was probably tough for them to figure out like what do we cut.
And I mean, look, like. I don't know if there's a better value for your money so far this year in terms of just paying a standard game price for the amount that's in this. It's nuts.
I think Elden Ring fans might argue with that a little bit, but
there is more content in this in terms of like physically things to do you have not done yet.
Yeah.
Elden Ring's probably gonna take you longer because of the grind and trying over and over again on things and having to learn how everything works. But yeah. Like I think I mean the
content in this, it's not that you're gonna have to try it 20 times to get through it.
No, it's just
there's that much of it. Yeah, and that is a big difference between the 2 games. But yeah, the value of this game again, I think it's probably around 20 hours long. But as you said, once you get into the open world stuff,
nobody's only gonna play this 20 hours.
Yeah. I mean, it could literally go over 100 hours easily.
Yeah,
I think they have made some tweaks to the Lego formula. Like the shooting is now Resident Evil 4 style. It's kind of like over the shoulder and offset to the side, which is different from how it's been in the past. As we already talked about the auto targeting, which is generous, but as you said, you can adjust that if you want to. There's also cover. You can shoot from cover in this now, which is something that's new that hasn't been.
There's hopping over cover. You can hit people as you hop over cover. It's like
you can build cover.
Full Gears of War action.
You can build cover. You hold circle and it'll reassemble things that have busted apart, and you can create cover on the fly right in front of you. The enemies do it too. If you start lighting up an enemy, it will start taking Lego parts and building cover in front of it, and it'll start using it as cover and doing the stop and pop thing. So the combat and the gameplay in this, I feel like, has gone through some pretty drastic updates and changes.
They've definitely flirted with a lot of that in the past in previous games, but this seems to be where it all has culminated.
Yeah. We talked about the combo system, which is simple but surprisingly deep. One thing I would say is the game is really easy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'll ever die in this.
I've died because I've fallen off the edges of things, but like not because of fighting anything.
Right.
Or
it's really easy. And I would argue, too, that while they have...
I guess if you're really bad at flying, maybe.
Yeah. While they have added depth to the shooting and the melee combat, you can pretty much just button mash your way through the game
Yeah.
Like, you don't even have to shoot people. You can just run up to them and just start meleeing them.
Now, there is a setting where you do not get health back unless you pick up hearts.
Oh,
which
really?
would probably make it much harder.
Yeah.
More like the old one. But they've also switched to more of a life bar system. Without, as opposed to the old system where you have the 4 hearts in the corner.
Yeah.
So I think that would be much harder to manage than I initially imagined. And enemies don't drop hearts much.
They don't. Very rarely.
Yeah.
In fact.
You can get upgrades that like make them do it more often, but
Yep. But this game also reminds me a lot of like a 3D platformer because of the gameplay variety. There's so much stuff that you're doing. You're flying, you're driving vehicles, there's melee, there's shooting, there's puzzle solving. There's even like an RTS section during the Battle of Naboo where you're just taking down like the squadrons of troops that are marching towards you. There's, as you said, there's pod racing. So there's racing mini games in this. Like, you're just constantly jumping through this stuff, and it does a good job of teaching you how to use all the things and how to do all the things. And again, I think for kids, that's probably a good thing. It's very intuitive and simple and to figure out how to fly or how to shoot or any of that type of stuff. But it is very much like a 3D platformer in that way. Like, every 5 or 10 minutes, you're doing something different. Like, you're never just like, oh, here's another section where I have to shoot and melee my way through it. It really mixes stuff up.
yeah, I think like it's not landing for me the way I thought it would. And part of it I think is it just because it's so rushed and because it does this and this and this and that and this and this and that, I never feel like I have a chance to like settle in and play a Lego game. Like the old games kind of had that thing where like you'd be in a level for a while, you sort of get your mind around it, you like, let's solve this, okay, let's move on, let's fight this little thing. Like, it just feels like it's like, okay, this and now this and now this, and as soon as I kind of get used to what I'm doing, like, it's time to do something else.
That's true. I mean, there's no denying that the game is like that.
Yeah, and sure. I think if the thing you've liked historically about Lego games is sort of the complex and kind of crafted levels, that's not really here.
No, that's true. They're little bits and pieces all snapped together, like Lego.
Yeah, little tiny bits that you get, but like most of it is just sort of like a real fast sort of like get through this battle or get through this section. But the most of the game is running through the open areas, finding puzzles and solving them. Yeah. So if that's what you like about Lego stuff, this will deliver beyond anything you could ever imagine. If you like those old kind of like, you know, intricate levels and you know, very very designed, you know, stretches like the old levels used to be, that's just not in this game.
Yeah, the actual levels themselves are short.
Yeah, and they're very underwhelming to me. So I'm a little disappointed by that. I was hoping it would be more like, you know, a lot of open world stuff broken up by like pretty, you know, like some levels you can sink your teeth into, and that's just not here.
Yeah, the open world stuff is kind of quarantined into that Galaxy free play mode. And it is, and I think that's where people are going to ultimately get the bulk of their playtime from.
Absolutely.
It's just flying from planet to planet and kind of just accomplishing those missions, those side missions from the NPC.
But it's just sort of like the, you know, and to get to that stuff, you know, Lego games have always been like this to some degree. You got to get through the story. You got to unlock the different types of characters because, you know, it's like, oh, I still don't have a dark side guy or I still don't have a bounty hunter or whatever to do these, you know, interact with these particular objects and that. But the way they've done the story really almost feels like, okay, they know you're going to want to get through this so you can unlock stuff in free play, and it feels like we're kind of rushing through the story to get to that. Yeah. And I don't think that is the way to have done. It feels like you're shortchanging sort of the reason we're here a little bit. And maybe that's just because I have a longer attention span for this than the average child would have. Yeah. But I do find that aspect of it a little disappointing.
Well, there are 300 playable characters in all. 300. That's a lot. Yeah. I don't know if that's a record for a Lego game. I'm guessing it's up there, though. And as we said, there is split screen co-op, so if you want to play it with your kids, you can. It is a vertical split screen. It does limit what you can see, like, horizontally. Mm-hmm.
And you're already a little, like, the field of view on this game is really restricted. Yeah. To the point that even I notice it. Usually I don't care about that kind of thing, but there's moments where I'm just like, God, I can't see anything. Like, it's so close, especially in the shooting, it gets so close to the character that you're like, you feel like you can't look around. And the same thing with, like, you know, you're looking around an open world area, you're looking around trying to find puzzles. Is there anything up here? And, like, you are really arbitrarily limited to how high you can look up. Mm-hmm. Or, like, even when there is something to look at, sometimes it's very hard to look up and see it, which I find weird. But
yeah, playing co-op is almost like playing a mobile game with your phone or vertically. That's kind of the window that you get to look into the world. So it is kind of limiting, but again, the game is so stinking easy. Like, it's not going to cause you to die. That's for sure.
No, you're going to get through it. It's just a matter of sticking with it long enough.
Yeah.
And then there's a ton of other stuff to do. The thing for me is like, and like the chat has alluded to this a little bit. Like, I don't think this game replaces the previous, like, complete saga.
Because it
was
it's
a very
more
different
thorough.
game. Yeah.
It is different. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. This is this feels like a Cliff's Notes version of Star Wars, whereas the complete saga felt like it really did kind of tell the story and get you into each of those locations.
Yeah.
And
I'd agree with that.
Like, I would not sell off my copy of the old game. This is more of a companion piece to that.
Yeah, this is flashier.
Yeah.
It looks a lot better, for sure.
It's a better game from a gameplay perspective. I think it plays better for the most part.
Sure. And it looks a lot better, too.
I just wish there was, like, since we're talking about percentages, I just wish there was, like, 10% more meat on that bone.
Yeah,
you know
I can understand that perspective. But I have been having a ton of fun with it. I'm going to keep playing it.
Yeah, it's fun. It is fun. You know, it's a nice. It is still a celebration of the brand. Of the
I totally feel that way.
And there's a lot of weird little in-jokes to see, and in-jokes that go outside of things. Like, I'm surprised at the non-Star Wars references in this. Like, one of the episode 1 levels is a reference to Better Call Saul.
Oh yeah, that's so weird.
There's a Qui-Gon makes a Taken reference. If you
I didn't pick up on that.
If you approach an area where there's a thing that he can interact with as a Jedi, he says, "I have a very particular set of skills that will be helpful here." And I was like, "That's a Taken reference. I have a very particular set of skills, and if I will find you, and I will." Yeah, like that's definitely. And that's the guy. That's Tom Kane. It's the guy who does Yoda.
Yeah.
And he doesn't act anymore because he had a horrible stroke apparently. And they recorded this so long ago, it might end up actually being one of his last published voice acting roles because apparently it damaged his ability to speak.
Oh, geez.
So that's the guy who does Yoda, and the narrator in Clone Wars, the guy at the beginning of every episode is like, it's like, "War in the Republic," like that guy. He's Qui-Gon in this, and you can hear it a little bit that it's the same guy who did the narrator. But it's a Taken joke in there, and I'm just like, all right, sure.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Again, the writing in this is very good and very clever, and it's, as a big Star Wars fan like you are, like, I haven't been offended by any of the jokes. And I don't feel like you need to be a hardcore Star Wars nerd to get them all.
I think even if you're just if you've just seen the movies, you'll get it.
Yeah.
Like, and like the really hardcore in jokes are not obtrusive to the point that they'll happen and you're like, I don't get it. Like, what I miss. Like, they're not like that.
A lot of times those are like sight gags.
Yeah, they're all side thing. Like, if you didn't know what it was, you're not gonna like think you missed a thing. You're just gonna like see like a funny thing happen.
Yeah. So I just come off playing Kirby in the Forgotten Land, which I really liked, which also had great co-op for parents and their kids. And now I'm playing this, and trying to decide which one I would recommend is tough.
I mean, I think I'd go with this one just because I think it's a more universal thing.
It's more likely that people are going to like the subject matter of this.
And there's more to it.
Yeah.
And it's on more platforms.
Yep.
Also, from what I understand, you should not buy this game on the Switch.
Oh, really?
Apparently
I'm not surprised by that at
all.
all.
No, not at all. Like, but apparently it is like image quality is all over the place. There's like, it's hard to see what things are because the image quality drops after a certain distance from the characters. Runs poorly. Like even the most hardcore Nintendo people I know are like, yeah, I tried it on both and I had to go with PS5. Like it's or whatever.
Is it unplayable on Switch completely? Because there's some people who only have a Switch.
I've had a couple people say that it is borderline.
Really?
Just the performance and just I mean, if you don't have anything else to play it on, sure. But like most people do.
Yeah.
You know.
Should have went with the cloud version, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like it's this. You don't think about it with a Lego game, but it does feel like it's just technologically a little beyond the Switch.
Yeah.
At this point.
I'm surprised too that there aren't more.
Some of these areas are huge.
They are huge. But at the same time, I am a little surprised that more of the world isn't modeled in Lego.
That's been a complaint about Lego games for a long, like more than a decade.
And I realize that they've done it that way for a long time, but it is a little weird to have like these Lego characters and objects in this real world.
Yeah, well, the visual language of these games, kind of going back to I think probably like Lord of the Rings, or maybe Batman 2. Like it kind of became like especially when they changed to more the open world angle. Like it's almost like the visual language of the games is like you can tell that there's something you need to do or a puzzle to solve when you see Lego objects. Mm-hmm. So like that's
it's like
sort
a
of
mental trigger.
Yeah, like okay, I'm looking at this rock wall, but there's a little section that's made of Lego, so I know I need to do something there.
Yeah.
So like that's sort of the shorthand.
I get that,
and that kind of works. But I think that all the time. I even think that in like the one shot of in that intro movie of Luke fighting Kylo Ren, and they're dancing around on the sand. And like there's a moment where I'm just like, they are the only two Lego things in this shot.
Yeah,
like it is a little weird. It is.
And I kind of
wondered, fun to see them take on the challenge of making a world completely out of Lego.
I do wonder if maybe the next one I would presume, well, maybe not with this series, but I would presume it would be next gen only. It would be PS5 and Xbox Series X. Maybe then they could try, but
I don't think they're really interested. I mean, they did stuff a little bit like that with like Lego Movie. Lego Movie had more stuff along those lines because of the nature of the aesthetic. But when it comes to the you know what I hope they do next, which is Bond.
Oh,
and they do have the James Bond license.
Right.
They are making the an Aston Martin set out of a real Lego set. So it could happen. I'm just saying, James Bond would be a no-brainer. Like,
it'd be a pretty good fit.
Especially in this format. Like that would, you could do tons of movies like that.
You could.
I probably wouldn't want to put as much time and money into it as you did for this because I think Star Wars is going to sell better. But I would love to see them try Bond.
Okay.
Or go back and try DC stuff again. I didn't care about the DC supervillains thing, but I think it might be time to go back to the well and do a big Justice League thing or something. That would be fun.
That'd be cool. Let's take a look at chat and see if people have questions for us about this game. You guys usually do. Let's scroll up here. Schneeky says they fly through the sequel. Such a shame a lot has been left out. That's something that Matt has been saying. Andy T. Monahan says, isn't there also Mandalorian content coming? Yes, I believe there is.
There are Mandalorian characters. And there's already some character that's actually already out. There's five character packs, and Solo and Mandalorian are already out, and there are I think it's Bad Batch, Mandalorian Season 2 is coming, and there's a fifth one I can't remember. Oh, Rogue One. So those are coming on the 19th, and then the other two, the two that are already out at launch are Mandalorian Season 1 and Solo. So if you desperately want to play as Enfys Nest, we got you covered.
Lestevad and Glottis, thank you for Twitch Prime while we're scrolling up here. Axel F 1986, thank you. Ozzy Brit 2000, thank you. Matt, you got a lot of congratulations from people in chat for your movie, which is awesome. I think AJ had a question somewhere. Oh yeah, he was asking about does it make sense that it was delayed so many times now that we played it? I think it does.
A little bit.
I think it's really ambitious.
I mean, there's a lot in there, but it's also like the format is pretty well worn. So it's like the question is sort of like, well, I guess it was. Yeah, you may be right that it was a lot of back and forth synergy meetings happening. I'm sure the pandemic didn't help.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done stuff with Lucasfilm, and there's the back and forth is incredible, and there's moments where like you've been through 10 meetings, and then in meeting 11 they decide they want to do something completely different.
Yes,
and there's nothing you can do about it because they
hold all the cards. So
I definitely understand how some of that might have worked. As we know, they are very protective of the Star Wars license, in part because they don't know what to do with it. And the most difficult thing to do with Star Wars these days is comedy. They are so paranoid about how people will take, ribbing the franchise because they've had such toxic fandom behaviors that they're worried about, sparking more of that off. So I'm sure every single joke in this was vetted by 14 people, and it's amazing it turned out as fresh feeling as it did.
Yeah.
Famously they removed Lord and Miller from Solo because they were, they were making basically a comedy, and they weren't comfortable with that. So they brought Ron Howard in to make it a really boring movie that nobody wanted to see. My favorite story of that, and I don't know, nobody really seems to know how true this is, but I think Lord and Miller alluded to it in an interview recently. Apparently, one of the big things that was a sticking point was in the scene where Solo asks Chewbacca what his name is, and Chewbacca goes, he's like, "Oh, Chewbacca, huh? Well, you're gonna need a nickname because I'm not saying that every time." Apparently, I've read in multiple places that the original Lord and Miller thing was. That they wanted to do was he asked him what his name is, and then Chewbacca goes, Chewbacca.
Oh, he actually says
English,
the name?
like the one word he speaks in English, because that's like a running thing, like with the fan. It's like you can't say Chewbacca in Wookiee,
right?
Like, or like almost any Wookiee, like what was the General Tarful or whatever. You can't say T's in Wookiee. Like Wookiees don't say T. So how is that his name? And so like. So the idea that he would say that and then like Han's like, well, I'm going to come with it, and he never speaks in English again. That's funny. That's funny. Really funny. Yeah. But it's not reverent enough for Star Wars. I'm just like, man, just let it go. You're already making the dumbest idea for a movie you've ever attempted. Like, who cares? It's like Solo is just like, it's like, oh, how did it think questions you've never cared or wondered about Han Solo. It's like, how did he get his name? Well, some guy gave it to him. Yeah. How did he get that blaster? Well, some guy gave it to him. Right. How did he meet up with Chewbacca? Well, some guy threw him in a pit. Like, it's like all the answers are dumb. Right. Like, they're not useful. Yeah. Very dumb. And also, you know, I have said before, like Rogue One and Solo have a lot of the same script problems, but Rogue One ends with 30 minutes of smashing Star Wars toys together, and Solo ends with 3 people arguing in an office. And those are two different ways that a movie leaves you. You know. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not super excited that I have Solo characters to play with through the DLC. Is all I'm saying. I don't think we're gonna get like actual gameplay DLC.
I don't either.
I don't think we're gonna get. Like,
you'll get some characters
like a Clone Wars unit or something. I don't think we're gonna get like a Clone Wars level or anything like that. I think this is it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And it's plenty.
Yeah,
you know, it's
huge.
More than enough.
It's
like
more
you don't
than
need
enough.
to add more than that.
Absolutely. Let's go back to chat quickly. I see some questions. The Squishy Muffin asks, "Is joining Sifted on YouTube better than Patreon?" For you, I think it's better to join on Patreon, because on YouTube, you are spending more to get the same thing, because YouTube doesn't give us enough flexibility in giving you content per the dollars that you spend. So if you're okay with going on Patreon, Patreon is the better way, absolutely. Let's see. Lazily Diligent says, look at the success of Colin's Last Stand. More shows, less production value. I love Colin, and I think he's good at what we do. But Colin's success isn't because of that. No. Let's just be honest. Colin's success is
Colin
because
fills a particular niche.
He's a right winger, and every right wing gamer supports him because he's really the only one. Mm-hmm. And again, I think he's good at what he does. I'm not saying he's. I mean,
there are others, but like they're obnoxious twits for the most part. And Colin, for, you know, production value, whatever. Colin does come off professional. Yeah. So that's he's the only one who does that. You know, you're not getting that from the quartering or whatever. You know.
So he's got that whole audience, whereas the rest of us have to fight for everybody else. So looking at what Colin does is not smart for me to do and like emulate. Let's see what else we got here. Jar Jar is responsible for the rise of the Sith to power. Okay,
that's the Darth Jar Jar theory.
That's just garbage, right? Or is it true?
It's not true. I mean, it's a real thing that some of the fans came up with. That like, if you twist certain elements of the series, you can believe that Jar Jar is actually the Sith Lord behind everything, because he's duped into doing so many things that lead to the creation of the Empire. And there are some people who still believe that at some point an evil version of Jar Jar will show up in the Disney Plus shows and be revealed as the mastermind behind everything. But I don't think that's where Filoni's going with it. Yeah. But it is if you read, people have gone in ridiculous depth and detail on that. If you look up the Jar Jar Sith Lord's theory, and some of it's fun. It's fun to mess with.
Sleeping Psychologist, is it too soon to make a Lego Elden Ring? No, I don't think it is.
I don't even know what that would be.
I don't either, but it would do very well, I think. If you were talking, Game Manual saying Guardians of the Galaxy was funny. You're right. It was also a really funny game. Yeah, it had good writing in it as well. It's a good point. Any other questions? Casuality. Thank you for Twitch Prime. Always scrolling by here. Andy T. Monhan, does this make the complete Saga game that Matt was talking about earlier on 360 or PS3 now more valuable due to the cut content?
I don't know about more valuable, but I would say it hasn't lost its reason to exist. Like there's there's a scenario in which I can see I'd rather play that or like the Lego Star Wars 3 Clone Wars game again than this.
Gino Mike, Shane wear a MAGA hat. That is not happening. That is definitely not happening. I would have to be dead before that would happen.
Yeah. I was in a room with the most Trump gear I've ever seen. Well, coming back from
you don't leave
Phoenix.
California very often.
I don't go to red states very often. No, but coming back, we were in a Carl's Jr. and like it was outfits. Yeah. They were in outfits.
Matching
like
everything.
Coordinated, like one, and not. I'm not talking about like. I'm not saying like the red, the cheesy red hats or anything. I'm saying like the two of the guys had like real fitted caps with like a leather like patch with Trump embroidered on it. I'm just like, you're serious, and like. Yeah, it was, and of course here I was, and I hadn't thought about it. I just put on, when I'm on a 6-hour drive, I'm gonna put on whatever my most comfortable stuff I got is, and one of the most comfortable shirts I happen to have was my Pride shirt.
Oh, geez.
And so I'm standing in this Carl's Jr. full of all these, and they're all like I see the eyes like flicking down to my shirt and back up to me, and I'm just like, what? Like you want to? Like, nobody said anything.
Yeah. I have to roll through the East Coast when I go home, so I've seen it before. Could you imagine wearing anything of like a politician with a politician's face on it?
I'm trying to imagine like wearing like a bunch of like Joe Biden equipment. I'm just like, no, why would I want to? No, that's not.
I would never ever wear.
Why would I want anyone's
like
first
that for
impression of me to be that? I don't know.
It's insane. Anyway.
Or any even Obama. Like I don't.
Never ever. I would never wear anything of a politician.
I am not enough of a fan of any politician to
it's insane.
do that.
It's insane.
Very
but anyway,
weird.
I think you guys, that's all your questions for.
Oh, I did
Lego
enjoy,
Skywalker.
When we first drove in Arizona, one of the first things we saw was a billboard for a firearms store nearby that read, "Welcome back to freedom." I thought that was very funny.
Oh man, it is a different world when you get out there. That's for sure. Okay, I think that's it for Lego Skywalker. I think you guys have exhausted all your questions. And let's move on. We're going to talk next about E3. So we thought that E3 was going to kind of hang on and do this digital thing, even though it wasn't doing the show in person. And then,
although you recall, I called this one.
You did call this.
I said this was coming.
Probably on the way. And the last week, the ESA announced that it is not doing the digital version of E3 either. Which, based upon what happened last year, I don't know that
not a huge downside. Also, it's like that. All those digital plans we never told you we had; those aren't real.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah, that is a little weird.
Yeah, they never said they were. I mean, they said like, "Oh, we're doing a thing," and that was about it. Like, it's not like there were specific things they'd announced that were going to happen, and now they're canceling them. They're mostly just confirming. Yeah, we don't actually have anything.
Yeah.
Go watch Jeff Keighley's stuff.
Now, they did say that the reason they're not doing the digital stuff is because they struggled to work with publishers. And, why do you think that happened, Matt?
Probably because the publishers realized they don't need this crap.
Well, I think it's probably because the publishers had already decided that they were going to work with Jeff.
That too. But also, like, Jeff isn't charging them millions of dollars to be involved.
Right.
Like, that's a big part of it. Like, the exorbitant fees that the ESA started charging people to just be part of E3 became ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Like, and that's one of the reasons a bunch of them bailed out. Like, it was just like, there's no possible way that we're not going to get at least the same effect by spending our own money on our own venue and not throwing it all at this company. Because that was where the ESA makes all its money every year, is like basically extorting the publishers at E3.
Do you think the ESA was trying to charge publishers to be a part of the digital show?
I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised either.
I mean, the big chunk that they get to charge is for the space on the floor.
Yeah,
obviously. But it wouldn't shock me if it was. We'll give you prominent position.
I mean, if that is the case, the ESA is really dumb. I mean,
I feel like that's a pretty safe statement.
Because if they imagine going and trying to pitch that when you know that the publishers could go to Jeff Keighley and get in his show for free.
Or just start their own live stream.
Or just do their own stream like they've been doing for the whole 12 months.
But like this is basically where they get all their budget for the year, so of course they had to try to do that. And so, that's chased other companies out earlier. I'm sure it's why Sony stopped as well. It's like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
for nothing. Like, you know, in the end, like I said, like Sony did not need E3 to launch the PlayStation 5.
It didn't
at all.
Yeah, think about that. It
no
launched
difference whatsoever.
a platform without E3.
Yeah,
that's a big milestone.
So, like, I don't know what else could happen to show that E3 is irrelevant. Maybe it could just go away for 4 years. So that's we're about to see that happen. You think, you know, if it even comes back next year?
That's the question.
I think E3 is dead. I think it's over.
Yeah, is it ever coming back?
Like, how do you restart it at this point?
I don't know.
How do you come back and say, like, okay, everybody, give us like $5 million per booth to come back and do this
just act like
again.
the last 4 years didn't happen.
Yeah.
And we'll just play nice like it's 2019 again.
Yeah, and try to like convince everyone that anyone's going there for any reason other than they go to Pactor's party and see everybody again.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only attraction to that would be like everybody gets to all be in the same city at once for the first time in 4 years. Nobody wants to go to E3 again.
Do you think there's still value in the business side of it though?
Probably,
like having that annual event. I mean, honestly,
somewhat, but at the same time, like, business continued just fine through Zoom. Like,
did it though? Yeah. We don't know that because we're not a part of that side of the industry.
No, but like none of that stuff.
Deals have continued to happen.
Yeah, it's been fine. Like, you know, the industry has not spiraled into a licensing oblivion. Like, it's you know, you can still buy video games in stores. Like, I don't, you know, a big part of expo stuff and business meeting expo stuff is like greasing the wheels and everybody socializing and getting some time out of the office, and we all get to let our hair down. Like, that's always been part of that.
Yeah.
You know, even if you're a dentist, that's part of that.
Yeah.
So maybe that, but like also like that's also kind of tied up with that toxic sort of bro culture that is sort of on the way out in terms of corporate spaces. So, you know, maybe, you know, what do you bring back? You have to bring back a new version of that to some degree, and how do you navigate that? I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's worth it in general anymore.
I mean, that's one thing I would say for E3, though, is I feel like it did kind of clean up the show before any of this stuff started happening. Like, you saw the booth babes going away, and, like, it used to be bad. I mean, let's be honest. In the early
it used to be very hard to tell the difference between this and, like, a car show.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the model, basically.
Yeah, in the early aughts, it was just girls in thongs and bikinis everywhere at E3. And so the ESA did do a good job, I feel like, cleaning it up and culturally getting it to a decent place. But I think that's the least of the concerns with the industry, honestly.
Yeah, at this point,
as much as they want to talk about it, I don't feel like
dinosaur.
Yeah.
Like, the concept of an E3 is a dinosaur at this point. It has been for a long time.
So do you think that's the case for all conventions?
I think it's the case with all conventions that are centered on this sort of promotional business aspect. Yeah, I don't think it's the case with something like PAX that formed because fans want to get together and
but
play
like
games
CES
together.
And stuff like that, just industry conventions. Because those happen in Vegas every week. Like,
I mean, I would argue that like CES is not nearly on the level of waste and graft as this. Like, you know, like in terms of like
CES is gigantic.
It is gigantic,
it's like
but it
4
also
times the size.
But it
of
covers
E3.
everything.
It does, yeah.
And it's like it's an actual place you can go and get all of tech in one location. This is so specific. E3 is so specific, and it's so, particularly in terms of the subject. That's part of the problem. Is the subject matter is readily available online, and you can reach that audience online at any time, no matter what. Like it's different if you're going to a boat show or something, you know, or like a dental tech convention or something. Like, there's not I mean, there are obviously dentistry communities online, but is everyone in that world, is everyone influential in that world plugged in the way they are in video games? No. Like, video games in particular are the earliest canary in the coal mine in terms of maybe you should just take this thing online because there's no reason to pack thousands of people into this convention center and have, you know, a week of the same 3 pictures of every booth flying out from everybody who attends, because it's just like, who cares anymore? You know, it was different back in the, I've said this before, but it's different back in the day when we were like one of the 3 camera crews on the floor.
Yeah.
When if you wanted to see anything
Access
that happened
really
at
meant
E3,
something back then.
Yeah.
Now it means really nothing.
Nothing. You want to see anything that happened at E3, you basically had the option of those 3 out, you know, us or Vic or maybe a local news outlet, and CNN would show up. And or you waited a month and a half for the magazines to run their things, or maybe you had a blog that had some like you know 480i pics they took with an elf camera or something. Like, it just wasn't the same. And now, like,
everyone has a cell phone camera. They
Everyone
walk
has a-
around live streaming the floor from
Right.
their cell phones.
and the tech online has advanced to the point that you don't need to do this big elaborate setup to get the information to your customers. You can just start a Twitch stream.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no reason for it anymore.
Yeah. What do you think about Gamescom?
And there's a bunch of other conventions that are more fan-centric that do the socialization aspect way better.
Yeah. What about Gamescom?
I don't know.
It's long for this world?
I don't know. Like, it's hard to tell. I don't know as much about Gamescom.
Yeah.
Gamescom is also more, I think, more attendee-focused.
I mean, there's just way more general
Way more
fans
people,
there.
but it's also always been about that. You know, it's different when you're talking about even TGS. You're talking about Tokyo Game Show. They've always let the public in. You know, and they've always had an angle for that. They've always had a reason for that. E3 has struggled to make that pivot, and to this day, I do not think, outside of the cachet of I want to go to E3. E3 is a thing I've heard about my whole life, and I want to say I went at least once. I don't think going to E3 as a member of the general public is worth the money it would cost.
I would argue that they need to lower the cost to get in, for
That
sure.
too.
Yeah.
But I'm not even just talking the cost to get in. I'm talking the cost to get to and stay in downtown Los Angeles.
Well, some people come and they just want to take a vacation to LA, and then E3 is just a part of
Sure,
it.
but part of the problem with that is to get to
The beach from
to go
downtown
to
is-
to go to E3, you
the
have to
hall.
stay in a part of LA that is not really doesn't really have anything else you'd want to see as a tourist.
Oh,
Outside
come
of, like,
on.
a
You want to
day.
see this guy dance, Matt?
I mean, you could see that outside the convention center too. I mean, it's just, I don't know. Like, part of it's just the fact that I've been to 20-something of these things, but it's like,
Yeah, we're jaded, let's be honest.
but also I know what they used to be, and they aren't that anymore. And they don't serve the same purpose, and they don't serve the same audience really anymore. Like, I don't know who a lot of this is for.
Yeah.
Because the people that you need to reach are going to be reached by those live streams and those Nintendo Directs already. So why are these companies spending millions of dollars to be here? Like, is anyone like more impressed or hyped or excited that they put a Dying Light 2 banner up that was the size of like a small basketball court? I'm not.
That cost $100,000 to hang that banner.
To hang
Not
it and
exaggerating,
print it.
by the way. That
No,
banner
that's how much that costs
about
to have that
$100,000.
space. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not even counting printing it.
Right.
And then storing it.
Yeah, but I mean, the cost is $100,000 to hang it there.
Yeah, just
the
for
ESA.
the space there.
That's
You
the
pay
kind of money
that
that
much
the ESA
money
is making.
to put that there.
Yeah. And I can understand where publishers would be like, you know what, screw this.
Yeah.
Like,
And you know what more people would see? A Twitter ad.
Also realize Dying Light 2, this is E3 2018.
Yeah.
That game just came
In
out.
a long time.
Was it worth spending $100,000 4 years ago
ago
for that game? I mean, I'm sure that's the calculus that these publishers are doing right now.
Yeah. And meanwhile, you got stuff like Bethesda's like, we're going to show this 6 months before it happens, and it's going to come out, and it's going to
sell 5 million copies in the first week. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. I'm a little more nostalgic for E3 than you are, but I'm also a realist, and I do understand that it is a lot of money for the publishers to attend. But I also realize, Matt, that these publishers make a lot of frickin' money.
Yeah.
Like, make a lot of money.
Sure, but they also want to spend that money in a smart way, and I don't think this is seen as a smart way to spend it anymore.
I agree with that. And another thing I would argue is that, there are people who work at these gaming publishers, testers and things like that, who make poverty wage. There is no reason that anyone who works on a game that ends up selling 10 to 20 million copies should be working for minimum wage.
Right.
When you make
you need a living wage for the area you're in.
When you end up making a profit of $1 billion on one game, your testers should not be paid minimum wage.
No.
And if quitting stuff like this frees
because
up,
your testers are the last line of defense,
right?
Between you and the public.
They're your employees on on a product that's going to make $1 billion in profit in a lot of cases. To me, that is crazy. These people should be getting paid more, and if bailing on E3 frees up some funds to pay some of those people the money that they deserve to be paid, I'm cool with it.
Yeah,
but I have no faith whatsoever that will actually happen.
Well, and also from a more utilitarian point of view, okay, so if you're spending millions to be here, hundreds of thousands per banner, so think about like what would be a better use of that money. You know what I would say is better use of that money? Take all that money, probably wouldn't cost as much as it cost to be at E3 for 1 year. Take all that money and start your own little media outlet in-house.
Right.
And just regularly broadcast, live stream stuff about your own company's games, interviews with your own company's developers and creative people, little promotional things about stuff like just do that. Just basically start a Twitch channel for your own company.
Yeah,
and it would probably cost as much or less to pay the people and have the space
less.
and all that. Yeah, it would be a better, and it would reach more people overall the course of the year, and people would remember it, and you wouldn't be wondering if you wasted your money on a $100,000 banner 4 years before a game came out.
GX Gear brings up a good point. Imagine being worth less than an E3 banner doing QA. I mean, you're worth like a third of that banner.
Yeah. Well, not that much.
Testers, man, they get paid like $30,000, even here in LA.
Some places, yeah.
Most.
But the
biggest studios.
I mean, minimum wage gets you a little more than that usually, but then you're gonna lose a bunch of it to taxes.
Yeah. It's awful.
Especially if you're working overtime, but like,
and it's an awful job too. Let's be honest. It's not glamorous in the least.
Yeah.
So, and I saw Vincent earlier said that he doesn't think Nintendo will bail because Nintendo doesn't tend to work with Jeff as much as the other publishers. How do you feel about that?
I mean, they used to, but
I mean, they do work with him.
They do work with him. I think Reggie leaving
made a
threw
difference.
a bit of a wrench in that. He's not as buddy with Bowser.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think Nintendo will show up for as long as it's a thing, but I just until it looks bad.
Vincent says, I think Nintendo will always pay for a booth. They aren't as willing to play with Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Like, there will come a point where if PlayStation and Microsoft and, like, if it's just going to be Nintendo's booth surrounded by a bunch of, like, third-party controller hawker booths, like, I think Nintendo will recognize that those are bad optics. But, yeah, I would definitely agree that Nintendo and Ubisoft would probably be the last people standing as E3 slowly collapses like a fly in a cupboard should they continue this. I just don't think it's coming back.
Vincent also says, I think a lot of whether E3 comes back or not depends on how Gamescom and TGS do. Now, TGS, I would say, is just irrelevant.
Yeah, I don't think they'd be looking at TGS
but I think there's some truth to that with Gamescom.
Yeah.
If its attendance is
Gamescom
really down.
happened last year, didn't it?
No, just digitally.
Just digital.
This year, they're doing it in person, though. And the crazy part is in Europe, COVID numbers are still dicey. It's not like it is here, where we're basically mask-free and just... I mean, my life is back. Like, I can do whatever I want now in the U.S. Like
for now,
you're right. I mean, it could start.
We got a little lucky in that for two reasons. First, the BA2, the second Omicron variant, is sweeping in right as the weather's warming up and everyone's going out. It's not
be outside.
As bad.
Harder to
also, it looks like the AstraZeneca vaccine has almost no defense against the Omicron variant. The numbers coming out of Britain are horrifying, and that's the curve for that variant here is just not matching what it was in Australia and Britain. So,
I mean, we're all mostly vaxxed too. Let's be honest.
So are they, but it's something like 87% of the new cases are vaxxed people. Like it's bypassing the AstraZeneca thing
because it's mutated so many times.
No, AstraZeneca just does not seem to have an effect on it. We don't have AstraZeneca here. We have other ones, so they're going to need to come up with a real fancy new booster to fix some of that. But because of the confluence of spring and summer, plus not having the AstraZeneca, I think we might get real lucky, and that whole thing might die out before it becomes October and it's time to go back inside and spike the numbers again. I will say that like we were at in Phoenix, there was nobody wearing masks. Nothing. At one point we were in an In-N-Out and two buses pulled up and disgorged 200 maskless college or high school students from a track team that just flooded the thing. And I turned to the director of the film. It's like, this is where we get it.
Yeah,
this is where it happens. Like
people aren't wearing them here either, though. I mean,
and it's more than it was there.
I'm sure
we were wearing masks in the In-N-Out, but we were the only 5 people.
I believe it.
Doing it.
You're in Arizona. AJ the Legend Watson says we may be in a different time, but I think there is something special about quote unquote being there. I agree to an extent,
but also like being there now still means there's no EA, there's no Sony, there's no like. You're missing very big, Microsoft is across the street and you got to get in through a separate thing. Like you're missing, it's not that feeling that it used to be where it's like, oh, the whole industry is here. Everyone's in this center. Like it was all right here. You're in the beating heart of the game industry right now. That's not there anymore. You know, Sony's gone. Like, the fact that there's no PlayStation presence is a big nail in the coffin.
It's huge. Yeah,
it's, you know.
He does bring up a good point, though. The costs associated with these conventions suck, but the memories, in my opinion, mean more. And I will say this: the older I get, the more value I place in memories versus like crap that I buy. The people that I'm with and the memories that I build with them, to me, there's a lot of value in that. And I think that's probably why I'm a little nostalgic for E3, because it's the one time every year I do get to see people that I've known for 20 years.
Yeah, I will just say that I did go to E3 as a member of the general public early on. I snuck in for the first 2 or 3 years I went. And then becoming part of the industry and being part of an outlet, night and fucking day.
Yeah.
Like, it was cool to see stuff, but like the appeal of E3 to me ended up entirely being part of it, not just being there.
Yeah.
I think being there for something like Comic-Con or PAX or even TGS, you know, more public and more fan-centered events is completely different from going to E3, which has always been a business industry event that barely cares if you're there unless you serve a purpose.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And that is just not how conventions as we generally think of them work, and it's something that the ESA has struggled to grapple with. They even before everything shut down, even E3 2019 was not a particularly public friendly event. Like, it just wasn't. Yeah. It was, and especially because so many of the things you'd wait around for hours to see a demo of or get your hands on to play briefly, you could have waited way less time to play it at Comic-Con in a few months.
Yeah, but it's not the same. They don't have all the same stuff there.
Not all the same, but a lot of it was all the stuff. Almost all the stuff they were willing to show the public, and like really the thing that the public most was excited about, other than Nintendo, in all the years, the few years they let the public in, the biggest hit was Spider-Man. That one year they had Spider-Man playable, and now that's not relevant because Sony's gone.
Right.
I guess the Fortnite booth, but like.
Yeah, the Fortnite booth is always a big deal.
The Fortnite booth is a big deal because it's got stuff to do.
Yeah, it's fun.
Like, it has almost nothing to do with Fortnite.
No, exactly.
You know?
Like, I don't think you can even play Fortnite there.
Like, well, what are you going to do? They have nothing to talk about or show. It's just,
like, here's a new hat or a new umbrella.
Here's stuff you recognize and go ride the wild llama. Like, it's like, you know, look, Epic gets it there. You know, like because the gist of the Fortnite booth is like, well, the one thing we can be sure of, because we've been here before, is that people are going to be bored.
Yeah.
So let's give them something to do.
Kevin Rappa asks, could the ESA somehow convince Rockstar to show up at E3?
No one can convince Rockstar to do anything.
Anything. Yeah. Rockstar hasn't been at E3 since probably 2008 or 2009.
Yeah, long time ago.
It has been a long time since Rockstar was there. I do remember their last booth. It was basically like a chain link fence.
Yeah, chain link. It was like a junkyard.
It looked awful. Like, they didn't even have a huge presence, really.
No, and we couldn't even get in.
Yeah,
they wouldn't take a meeting with us.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think they're ever coming back. Honestly, I don't think you could give them any amount of money to come back.
Rockstar knew before anyone.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, 2K is there.
2K is there, but Rockstar knew. Like, Rockstar was beyond.
Yeah.
Anything very early on.
Yeah, it figured out it was better than, or it thought it was better than the rest of the industry a long time ago.
After San Andreas, they knew they didn't need to answer to anybody.
Yeah.
And so far, they're right.
So, final question here is, does E3 come back next year?
I'd be surprised.
I would be too at this point.
Maybe in a digital form if they can get their act together. But
I think the digital form is even less likely, because what's going to happen, Matt, is Jeff Keighley's going to take it over this year.
Yeah,
he's going to kill it.
Assuming Jeff's thing does well, like there's.
Why would it not? It would take a disaster. I mean,
I think is more likely is Jeff adds an in-person component to his thing.
I mean, let's be honest, Matt. You and I, or Jeff, we could all do a digital E3 that would just do gangbusters. It's not that hard. It's all about getting the games. If you get the games and get the content, the rest just happens. Like, anyone who's worked in production can create one of these shows, no freaking problem. IGN could do it. And it is a little weird to me that IGN wasn't the ones that did this. That Jeff Keighley is the one who has taken over E3 instead of IGN.
Yeah. I mean, we saw, it doesn't super shock me because Jeff has always been Jeff has always been willing to play the game outside the lines. And that has been his great strength. Like, even back in the day, everyone's like, how does he keep getting all those crazy exclusives? And it's like, well, because he doesn't go through PR, he goes through marketing. Because he knows all the marketing people.
He does,
through connections through his dad and stuff.
Yep.
And that was his secret.
Yeah.
And in this case, I remember when he first started the Summer Games thing and started, he decided to break away from E3 and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, why is he doing that? Why is he going to challenge that? I'm like, man, don't underestimate. I am no huge fan of how he does some of his stuff. In fact, I think it's bizarre that the Oscars were more like the Game Awards this year, in the sense that they did a bunch of the awards ahead of time and barely buzzed through them as though they didn't matter. I'm like, that's not what you need. You're emulating in the wrong direction here, boys. Yeah. But don't underestimate him. Don't underestimate his ability to see the path.
I worked with him for like 10 years. I know,
and he knew. Look,
he exactly what he could do.
He was so inside on the E3 stuff, and he worked with him forever, and he knew it was coming, and. I think I said at the time when he broke off like last year, the year before, whatever it was, for his own thing. I'm like, he knows something. Yeah. Like, something's happening. He sees what's coming, and he knows this is his time to go independent.
But you're right. He was right. When I was at Game Trailers and he was doing his TV show on Spike, Game Trailers TV with Spike TV, and we coordinated every week on exclusives. I talked to PR people to get exclusives for the website. The people he was talking to, I didn't even know who they were.
No. And they're the ones who call the shots,
right?
Because PR would be like, "Oh, we do the thing. Well, we plan this, but we can't because marketing's doing this thing with Keeley." Right?
I would get calls from PR people and be like, because he would get stuff for the show, and then as soon as it aired on the show, it would go onto GameTrailers.com, and it was huge. And then because of that, we had so many people on the site that I could get exclusives for almost anything just by asking PR, but. A lot of times I would get calls from PR people. They're like, where in the hell did that come from? I'm like, Keeley. And they're like, but Keeley didn't talk to me. And I'm like, exactly. He didn't talk to you. He talked to somebody, your boss.
Yeah, he talked to someone way over your head.
Yep. Or someone who works in marketing instead of PR. Yeah, where the
marketing controls all of it.
Because they control the money.
Yeah. Yeah. Marketing can make changes to the games.
Yeah, I know. Yep.
Like, marketing is why the assassins in Assassin's Creed wear uniforms.
Yeah.
Even though they're not supposed to.
Right.
They're supposed to blend in with everything.
Yeah.
But the Templars all look different, and the Assassins all wear a notable uniform with a point on their hood. Because marketing was like, well, we want that to be recognizable. Yeah. And what marketing says, you do.
Yeah. I would say it's more likely that E3 doesn't come back than it does. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee you, if Keeley's going to knock it out of the park, Summer Games Fest, I know he is, and why would any of the publishers want to work with the ESA again on a digital event? They won't.
Not for the amount of money they're going to try to charge.
So there's not, I think the chances
And on top of that, if the ESA isn't charging money for it, why does the ESA want to do it?
I know.
That's the whole point for them.
Yeah, it's a money-making event. So I think the chances of the ESA doing digital E3 next year, 0.
Pretty low, yeah.
The chances of doing an in-person event, I'd say right now is about 50-50.
Mm-hmm. And I'd heard, I don't have any proof of this, but I'd heard that they didn't even keep up their reservation on the convention center.
Oh, really? That's a really bad
sign. Which would indicate something. Yeah.
That's a really, really bad
But
sign.
I think the most likely outcome is E3 just doesn't come back, or if it comes back, it's just sort of like we're going to invite the business people to hang out in the Marriott and make their deals or whatever, but there's not going to be a show floor.
Yeah.
And Jeff gets his ultimate goal of having a Game Awards
in the middle of the year
thing in the middle of the year. He's got every 6 months. Yeah. That's his year now. He spends 6 months planning the Game Awards. He spends the next 6 months planning the Summer Games Fest, and he's got kind of the industry covered from each end of the year. And that is, and I think he will simply be the fortress of that for a long time until he shows some sign of weakness or faltering, which will take a sea change in how. This media is presented, and that may happen. Maybe Jeff in the end does not adjust to the VR revolution properily, and some next generation Jeff Keighley comes
whatever.
in. Yeah, maybe some new Jeff Keighley equivalent comes in and figures that out, and suddenly he's the ESA.
Or Facebook or someone does it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time seeing Facebook, like a corporate entity like that, moving in. Without just moving in on him. Because what might happen there is someone just tries to buy the Game Awards from Jeff.
What's the best way to kickstart the metaverse, though? To do it in E3 in the metaverse? Because the people who are most likely to have VR HMDs are gamers.
Yeah, but gamers are also the least likely to agree to have a Facebook account and buy your your VR headset to do that.
If they needed to do it to watch E3 stuff, they do it.
You would never be able to have that happen, though.
It could be. I mean, I'm talking 5 years down the road.
Yeah, but you would never have a VR exclusive event. You'd limit yourself too much. Facebook would have to start that event themselves, and Facebook is not going to have the access that, because all Jeff has to do with that is counter program.
Or they hire Jeff.
That all comes down to how willing Jeff is to sell out.
Right.
And the thing is that Jeff doesn't need the money.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's never needed money.
And I think he values, I mean, this can always change, but I think Jeff values his independence.
Yeah.
And how he thinks it should be done more than he would value like a payout from Meta.
I'm sure.
So,
but it's not looking good for E3. And like, I'll be honest with you, Matt, I don't even really miss like all the B-roll that you guys were just watching from the last several E3s. Like, I don't think I'll miss that, because the people that we know in the industry, you don't even see them on the floor anymore.
None of us
because
go
they're
to the floor
all
anymore.
like executives or whatever, and they're not out on the floor walking around anymore.
No, they're doing biz dev stuff over at the Marriott or.
And what I will miss is stuff like Packers Party, where everybody gets together and you get to see everybody you haven't seen for, and in this case, it's been like 4 years now. It feels like. That's what I'll miss, and you can still do that with a Summer Game Fest. Patrick can still do an E3 party.
Yeah,
but it's a Summer Game Fest party.
Yeah, if Jeff does an in-person equivalent, like with the Game Awards, then everyone will come into town for that.
I don't think Jeff will ever do an in-person event. It's way too much work, way too much hassle. I just don't think it'll happen.
I think he will.
The logistics of that are pretty insane.
The logistics would be more or less the same as the Game Awards. I don't think you would do a show floor, a big thing like that. I think you would just have an audience kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you'd bring in, you want to bring in the developers, do interviews and stuff like that. It still brings everybody into town, more or less at the same time.
Yeah, I agree with that. So anyway, I believe it's probably the end of an era.
Yeah.
Which sucks. I was saying on Good Morning Gaming how, E3 is a big reason why I ever joined the industry. Because when I launched my fan site back in college, back in the mid to late 90s, like the holy grail was going to E3. The first time I walked into my first E3, I was like, oh my God, I will do anything to become a part of this industry. And I did, and it somehow happened. And so I'm always going to have that affinity for the show, because without it, I don't think I would have ever done this. So it's a little disappointing to me too, because I think about someone who's 18 right now and they're launching their own YouTube channel, and maybe their dream is to go to E3 one day, and now that it's not.
Their dream is not to go to a show that hasn't happened since they were 15.
What is their dream?
Their dream is to have a successful YouTube channel.
But I mean, my dream was to have a successful website.
But as a conduit to get into the industry, the dream now is to have your own business. Basically, your dream now is to have that big Twitch channel. The dream now is to have access and influence. It's not so much to go to this thing. That's not really as important. Or if you go to that thing, you better be the center of it.
No,
that's part of it.
That's too bad.
The influencer culture is a very different thing, because I understand what you mean when you talk about like seeing that place and want to be like, I get it, I did that too. The difference for me is like
it's inspiring,
right? The difference for me is that I don't think it has been inspiring for more than a decade. That was a function of E3 from when we were that age, and that isn't what it is anymore. The world has changed. The world has moved on, as Stephen King would say, and time takes no prisoners, and that includes E3.
I don't know. I still have I wouldn't go that far, but. I do think it's teetering on the brink of never coming back. It's right there.
I'm not saying that ESA is not dumb enough to try it, but I really don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
You wasted too many years.
Yeah. Well,
they could have tried it this year. They could have tried it this year, but I think they used the pandemic thing as an excuse to show, because they announced that real early. Like you got to plan a lot of stuff, but like. Or maybe they didn't want to throw that much money at the planning and have to cancel it if something went wrong by June. I said at the time, and I still believe like they were using it as an excuse to not do it this year. And this way,
if that's the case, then they're definitely not. But they already said they're doing it next year.
They also said they were going to do a digital event this year.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff can change.
Yeah. By the way, we should have mentioned that the ESA on the record has stated that it is doing both a digital and in-person event next year. So, and in Los Angeles, and they're saying there's going to be a bunch of changes, and it's going to be more awesome, blah, blah, blah. But as Matt said, we've heard that before. So, we'll see how it goes. But anyway, that's E3, or what may be the lack thereof. It was
E3.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk next about PlayStation. the entire industry's been on a spending spree, buying up all these studios. And Matt, what I realized is that we've kind of been saying that PlayStation has been having its lunch eaten by Microsoft, and in some ways it has, because Microsoft kind of did all the big priced, the high-profile acquisitions. But I went back and kind of looked. PlayStation has acquired a lot of studios in the last year and a half or 2 years, and just this week, Jim Ryan said that they're not done, that they are going to acquire more studios. We'll get to whether that's a good idea or not. But first, I just want to run down very quickly the studios that it's bought in the last couple of years. Housemarque, actually, we could probably add Insomniac, because that was 2019, I believe.
Yeah.
So Insomniac, Housemarque, Bluepoint, Bungie, Firesprite, Nix's, Fabric Games, Valkyrie Entertainment, and they just bought Jade Raymond Studio, Haven Studios. Those were all since 2019. So, are we wrong for saying that Microsoft has kind of been out-dueling PlayStation with these acquisitions?
I mean, I think most of Microsoft's acquisitions have been a bigger deal in terms of what they bring with them. I think, Insomniac obviously makes a ton of sense. Bungie is a big deal. Otherwise, a lot of those companies, I don't know what they do. Whereas you tell me Bethesda or Obsidian, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think Microsoft's been louder about it, because they know they don't have anything else. They need to give people something to look forward to. Whereas Sony's just like, we don't need to tell you we acquired all these things, because you'll find out when we release a game from them in a couple of years. In the meantime, here's all these other things you want to play. They don't need to give us something to look forward to beyond what's already there. Whereas Microsoft needs to kind of reassure everyone. And that's what they've been doing. They do it under the auspices of the hype's coming, but it's they want you to know there's more coming than just Gears of War. They want you to know that there's going to be a lineup in the next couple of years that has variety and something for everyone, and it's not just going to be 2 shooters in a racing game.
Now, some of these studios, granted, they're not huge acquisitions. Nix's, Fabric, Valkyrie Entertainment.
Yeah, I don't know what.
My guess is most of those studios were purchased just to be support studios when they need someone to handle the multiplayer mode, or they need someone to handle a remaster or a remake of an existing game. I think those studios were probably acquired for that kind of stuff. But there's no denying, obviously, Insomniac and Housemarque and Bluepoint and Bungie, and to a certain extent, Firesprite, which wasn't a big deal when it was acquired, but it does sound like PlayStation is putting a lot of investment into that studio and trusting it with some big projects. It's reportedly working on Twisted Metal, and I think it's working on a unique game right now as well. So I don't think it's just going to be a support studio. But do you think maybe we're underselling PlayStation, though, a little bit? And do you think this is smart?
No, I don't think we're underselling it. I think those are less high profile acquisitions compared to something like Bethesda. I mean, it's just Elder Scrolls is probably never going to be on a PlayStation system again. That's a bigger deal than they bought Bluepoint.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's smart. I mean, I don't know. Some of those companies, I just don't know what they're doing. I don't have a perspective on why you're buying them to fill out the roster with smaller scale releases, which Sony does seem to value. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on that until I see what they're going to do with them. Until we see some output from them.
Should Sony keep buying more studios?
I mean, I think they should be picky about it. I think their stable is pretty solid as it is. I do think, and I think I know they'd have to go through some parent companies, buy some parent companies to get it. You could do worse than to buy From. I mean, that would be the last big piece on the board. That's the ball
that's sitting on the tee right now.
Yeah, that's the last big piece on the board.
Most viable studio you could purchase.
Yeah, if you have to buy a PlayStation to play the next, Elden Ring,
that could be a big deal.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to be unhappy about that. The PC players would be unhappy to have to wait a year.
There aren't many studios left out there that make sense on that scale.
No,
on that scale, which is important, because you could Bandai Namco, Capcom, those are all bigger purchases than From Software.
And I think if anyone buys Bandai Namco, it's going to be Nintendo.
Yeah, because they already partnered with them in so many.
Yeah, there's already relations there. I mean, I guess somebody could try to buy Ubi, but that seems
could you imagine how much the internet would melt down if Nintendo bought From Software?
I can't even imagine. So outside the box.
Oh my gosh.
I guess
that would be a ground shaker. That's for sure.
Like Koei, like Tecmo Koei. Like I don't know if anyone would want to dive into that, and
I would not.
It just doesn't seem worth it.
No.
Like I think
that Dynasty Warriors money is dried up a long time ago.
I think you get the best of that by doing what Nintendo does and just partnering with them when you need to. Yeah, I think From is the biggest piece left on the board at this point.
I'd agree. Yeah. And
in terms of things you could feasibly buy, like I don't think you could feasibly buy Ubisoft or 2K or anything like that.
It's a little complicated because they are owned by a parent company, but
the day may come when EA is on the block. Like they're especially with this change with FIFA. Like I don't know how that's gonna go.
Yeah, because they're basically losing the FIFA license.
Yeah.
Although it sounds like they'll still have all the players in teams somehow.
Yeah, they're just gonna be EA Sports Football Club.
Yeah.
Because it's like the Players Association is a different license.
This game is so gorgeous, by the way.
Yeah.
This Demon's Souls remake, really just stunning.
Yeah, I loaded it up again after taking a break from Elden Ring, like running through this, and like one of the things that I really was surprised to notice is like this game's so easy now.
Oh, compared to Elden Ring?
Compared to like playing the others for so long, and just how smooth this is now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm sure I wouldn't think that the original was all that easy if I pulled it up on PS3 because it's so choppy and clunky in places.
It's
but like
really
this thing,
archaic.
This thing just plays like butter to the point that it's just like, oh, this is great. Like this is no problem at all.
Matt, do you fear that we're going to get to a place where there are no third parties anymore?
No.
No?
There will always be third parties that rise to fill those niches.
Like, I mean, one that's kind of rising now is like Embracer and THQ Nordic.
Embracer, THQ Nordic, Devolver.
But Devolver's all indie, small stuff.
So were some of these others for a long time. Like THQ Nordic was, Nordic Games was not a player until they bought THQ and became a player.
Yeah.
And got
but that is an anomaly. That doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, but all it needs to do is happen 5 or 6 times in the course of 20 years, and then you got your new lineup of third parties. And Devolver is getting there. Devolver DMCA'd some stuff the other day for this one channel. I can't remember what it was, but basically they did a thing that was very the antithesis of what Devolver presents themselves as being. So they are living long enough to see themselves become the villain. So we'll see.
But we did just kind of mention that there's really one pawn left on the board. I mean, isn't it already kind of getting a little scarce?
No. Because we just also mentioned a bunch of guys that are not acquirable because they're too big. You got 2K, you got EA, you got Ubisoft, you got Capcom. I mean, I guess somebody could probably buy Capcom if they wanted to.
You could definitely buy Capcom.
But Capcom doesn't seem interested in that right now.
They just had a great year financially.
Yeah.
In fact, I think they just gave every employee at the company like a huge 30% raise,
which
is awesome.
Yeah,
that's exactly what you should do after you have a good year.
It's also a good way to prevent yourself from being acquired.
Yeah,
and a good way to prevent your employees from unionizing.
That's true. Yeah, that is true.
So yeah, I think there's the third party realm is plenty healthy, and you've got all these other indies that are coming up, and and there's nothing stopping a lot of those indies that become established from forming like another Devolver, that kind of thing. That might be some of the future, is sort of these sort of conglomerate, like almost like work co-ops of indie studios that kind of band together like that.
I mean, Embracer's kind of like that.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
the Collective used to be like that until they got bought.
Yeah, Embracer's growing by leaps and bounds.
Yeah, and let's not forget that part of the point of establishing a business in almost any industry is to be, especially tech, is to be acquired. Mm-hmm. Like that's your cash out. That's what people want.
It doesn't feel like
but there will always be someone starting a new one.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like there's anything in place to keep it from happening.
What from happening?
This consolidation, where I mean, eventually it could get to a place where Microsoft does buy EA.
Yeah,
or does buy Ubisoft.
But what I'm saying is that there will
Capcom.
be something else to fill that niche. That's just how it goes. There will always be room for third-party product. And if EA and these big guys we think of as being the definition of third-party go away because they get acquired, something else will fill that role.
Will you have any ideas on what the next acquisition may be for PlayStation?
I mean,
Congram is throwing out Remedy Entertainment.
Remedy would be a pretty decent pick. Although I think you're kind of in the Bethesda realm with that, where it's like they're so good, but they're so unreliable sales-wise. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I wonder what the price on that would be. IO Interactive feels like they're kind of hanging out there, especially if that James Bond game does well.
Right. Yeah. For those of you guys don't know, they also make Hitman.
Hitman, yeah, the Hitman guy. I mean, I think the James Bond game is going to be very much like Hitman.
It'll probably sell better than Hitman.
Maybe. I mean,
the last
Hitman 3 did real well. Yeah. Hitman 3 was up there.
Yep.
That was like an 88 Metacritic or something.
Yeah, it still boggles my mind, but whatever. But it did sell well, too. At least out of the gate. It didn't appear to have legs.
No, it's still going, though.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're still adding new DLC to it. And Dark Force 256 asks, at what point is it a monopoly? I mean, that's a good question. And the FTC is supposed to stop stuff like this.
Right.
In fact, I don't know if you saw, but 4 U.S. senators sent a letter to the FTC telling them you need to look closer at the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal.
Well, the answer to that is it's not a monopoly and never will be.
Yeah.
The thing here is like if Microsoft bought Sony or Nintendo, like they bought a hardware manufacturer, if they bought someone that allows you to, one of the companies that is the conduit for how you play video games, that's different. Mm-hmm. But there's no such thing as having a monopoly of ideas.
Yeah.
Like you can't own too many successful IP. Like that's not a thing. You could argue that like there's an argument to be made in an antitrust suit that like you couldn't beat this competitor, so you decided to buy them instead. Mm-hmm. But that is not what's happening in any instance of this in the game industry. Like that is not why Activision Blizzard was bought. Right. They were not bought because like Microsoft just couldn't figure out how to stop World of Warcraft. You know, right. They were bought because they were vulnerable and the owners wanted to get out of it, and Microsoft was the company that had enough money to buy them. But the trick is like it's sort of like the Disney thing. It's like, did Disney buy the method by which we make movies? Like, if I want to make a movie, do I have to go to Disney with my hat in hand and ask them to borrow a camera? No. So if you want to make a video game, do you have to go through Microsoft? No. Then it's not a monopoly. If you want to buy a video game console to play video games on, do you have to go through Microsoft? No. You can buy a PlayStation or a Switch. It's not a monopoly.
The only real monopoly I know of that ever existed in the games industry, some maybe you could argue Atari 2600 maybe. But the only one that I really know of is Koei Tecmo during the PS1 era. You had to go through Koei Tecmo to have your games manufactured.
Right.
They had some crazy...
They had some weird patent on the disc pressing.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But other than that, like, no. Like, people look at monopolies like, oh, there's something that they have that I want that I can't get on this thing that I have. That's not what a monopoly is. No. It literally has to be a company that corners an entire market on something. Yeah.
And at this point, Microsoft is nowhere near that.
And it's not like
Microsoft's
cornering the market
place.
On Call of Duty. No. It's cornering the market on video games.
On a medium.
Right.
On an industry. That's not what... If you control the means of production to the point that no one can produce anything else to compete with you, Microsoft is never going to be in that situation.
Yeah, ever.
And, you can just come up with a better idea.
Right.
And frankly, Sony's pretty good at coming up with better ideas than Microsoft. So is Nintendo a lot of times. And
which is why
it's just never going to stick. Like Microsoft also has a reputation for this because they did get hit with some of that for Windows. Because Windows, and Windows is a different deal because it's an operating system. It's the way you need. It was so dominant that basically not only did you need to buy Windows to run your PC so you could run all the most important programs, but if you were making software, you basically had to make it for Windows if you stood a chance. That's the problem there. Yeah. And there was the behind-the-scenes thing where Microsoft, especially, was a big supporter of Apple. Because while they were competitors, Apple was no threat to them, and they knew that as long as Apple existed, they could point to them and say, look, there's our competition.
They have an OS. Yeah.
So there was that's why Microsoft Office was available on Apple OS forever. Because
so that they could basically maintain a monopoly.
Yeah, we get because if you gave them that business software, it made iOS more viable and guaranteed that Apple wouldn't go away. And when those iMacs hit and Apple had that resurgence, it was the best. Microsoft was thrilled.
For Microsoft, yeah,
they were thrilled because then you could point to that. It didn't quite work, especially when Linux started making noise about things, because Linux showed how difficult it was to get a foothold in the face of that. So you had an antitrust situation there, but that is not going to be the case as long as there's more than one game console out there. That's the problem. Yeah, not even a problem. It's just that's just not the argument to make.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And certainly nobody's going to be. If you want to talk about you got too much money to throw around, Nintendo had more money than all their competitors combined for decades.
Yeah,
but it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Also, it didn't matter in the sense that it's not antitrust, and it also didn't matter in the sense that it didn't help them win.
Yeah, someone would argue that NES was maybe borderline monopoly.
NES was, but part of that was because just no one else was in there yet.
Yeah, no one else wanted to be a part of the games industry.
Nintendo moved into a niche that was believed dead.
Right.
Like they had to, the reason.
That's when consoles became known as Nintendos.
Yeah, it's also when video games became known as boys' toys. Mm-hmm. Because to get it into the stores, they had to market it as a toy. That's why it came with the light gun and Rob the Robot, and why Rob the Robot went away so fast when it was established that they didn't need that anymore. Because no one would touch a video game system after the crash. And once they got into toy stores, they decided was their vector, their way to get in there. So like, okay, and they said, well, toy stores are organized by boys and girls' toys. Which
one are we putting it in?
And they picked boys. Yeah. And that's when all of a sudden all video game marketing shifted to being towards boys. Before that, look at the marketing, look at the ads and the magazine ads and commercials and everything for the 2600 and all that stuff.
There's always women in the ads.
The whole family was always depicted, or it was like George Plimpton in a suit telling you how great the Intellivision. It was like a corporate presentation. Yeah. Like there was no like, hey boy, the weird extreme gamer thing came out of being marketed in toy stores, not in.
Well, I'll put it to you this way.
Not in Sears Roebuck.
My older sister, played the Atari 2600. She did not play video games after that. Mm. So, proven point. Yeah, anecdotal, but still.
But it is a massive shift in how that was marketed.
Yeah,
and it's a stigma that remains to this day.
Yeah,
like that was a decision they could not have possibly foreseen the ramifications for. But yeah, Nintendo probably had a little bit, and Tengen came at them for stuff like that. But the companies trying to make the third party cartridges and not have the Nintendo seal of approval on it, and they won. They did. They won that suit. That's why those Tengen games are worth so much now.
Yeah,
because a lot of them were better than Nintendo's versions.
Yeah,
Tengen Tetris is way better than Nintendo.
Oh yeah,
Tetris.
Way better. Yep. I think acquiring more studios is smart because it's going to work no matter which strategy you want to use. So if you want to follow Microsoft strategy of a Game Pass service, you're going to need studios to create exclusive content. If you want to follow PlayStation's existing strategy, which is create these awesome games and sell them for $60 or $70,
big boutique expense,
you're going to need studios to do that. So no matter what, it's never a bad idea to help to build your first party roster of studios.
Either Game Pass or just a standard traditional release schedule. You have to feed that beast.
Yep, absolutely.
And look, Microsoft has shown us firsthand in the Xbox One generation what happens if you don't stay on top of that.
Yeah.
You have these giant deserts in your schedule.
Yep.
And I think Sony is very much trying to avoid that.
The Abrams says Tencent has invested in more studios than Microsoft and Sony combined.
That's true.
Generally a mobile publisher.
Yeah, but they have
a ton of money, man.
Yeah.
They bought what percentage of Epic do they own? I know it's not controlling.
It's not controlling, but it's like getting there.
Yeah. They're definitely someone to watch. But meaning if you're into the financial side of gaming, it's something to watch. For our purposes, probably not.
No. But if someone is going to go around screaming about Microsoft being a monopoly, they should really be paying more attention to Tencent. Because you never see those people talk about Tencent.
Yeah. Because they're this Chinese company that's...
Right. Also, if they were doing that, there's nothing
over there doing their.
Well, there's nothing we could do about it. You know, like the FTC can't. They can't
regulate.
They're not in America, so it doesn't matter.
Nothing they can do.
But if you're going to complain about Microsoft, you should also be complaining about Tencent twice as much.
Yep.
But also, what Tencent has is also not a monopoly. It's just a lot of investments and things.
Yep. Okay. It's time to move on. We're going to talk next about April Fool's Day. I talked about this in Good Morning Gaming last week, how April Fool's, for whatever reason, is this huge thing. And actually, I want to get your take on that, Matt. Why do you think April Fool's has become such a thing in the games industry?
It became a big thing on the internet in general because it's so easy to fool people with some slick produced thing. And people don't check anything, people don't double check, they just share it, and it's so easy to go viral with a cool thing or a dumb thing or a funny thing that I think it just became, especially in the era of social media, became seen as like an easy way to get some eyeballs on you.
I shared a story in Good Morning Gaming.
Also, in terms of gaming, I think it's big in gaming in particular because a lot of people who are big game people, especially online, are A, very gullible, B, don't check things, and C, get really, really mad when they realize they've been fooled. And that is a perfect storm of entertainment for people who do these things.
I shared a story in GMG about the first year I worked in the industry, And for whatever reason, on April Fool's Day in 2001, the guy our news editor was out, and he had gone to some event to play some game for preview or whatever, and they just threw me on news. They're like, okay, Mr. Features Editor, you're doing news today on April Fool's Day. And I vetted, I think I wrote 20 stories that day or whatever. I had vetted them all, and there was one story that was just so insignificant that, no one would even care about it. And I was like, surely this story's legit. And I published it. And sure enough, it was an April Fool's joke, and I got burned by it. And everyone there was understanding. They're like, oh, we threw you to the wolves today. It was the worst day we could have put you on news, blah, blah, blah. But still, I got fooled by it, and it was a huge thing back then. And then I did a little bit of research for that topic on GMG, and I just started remembering all the EGM stuff from, 90, 91, 92.
Yep, the Shenlong.
Oh, I mean,
thing.
They've done the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles code and
the Shenlong thing was the original to me, because that was the one where I saw that magazine.
Street Fighter 2.
Street Fighter 2 was this ridiculous thing to get to fight Shenlong.
Yeah, you had to play through it twice without taking any damage.
Yeah, you had to fight through the game twice and win. And basically, the way Street Fighter 2 worked is if you both tied, it was a draw match, and you got two rounds. Each person got a one round, and then you do it again. If you draw again, actually, I think what happens is you lose. But they said because that never happens.
Yeah.
They said what you need to do is if you tie twice, you win and you'll move on. So you had to play the whole game twice, never taking damage and never dealing damage, and win through draws every time. And then you had to.
It's surprising that it fooled.
It was
people.
impossible. There was no possible way.
Exactly.
And then you had to do something with Bison where you had to there was some trick to how you had to beat Bison.
And people believed it.
And then if you did the second time you went through the game, instead of fighting Bison, Shenlong would come out and throw Bison off the screen, and you'd fight. He looked like Akuma with a white ponytail.
Yeah.
And in fact, Akuma's based on that because it was on that Photoshop, basically.
Right.
So because that's where that idea came from. And man, when that magazine came out, we went to the arcade a couple days later, and all anyone was doing was trying to do it. And I'm like, I don't think you can do that. It's not possible. And for a month, there were people that did nothing but do this and saying, no, I know a guy at Golfland in Sunnyvale that did it. And I'm like, who?
That's all it took.
It's always, it's just the same guy he knew who had Chun-Li throw her bracelets or any of the weird rumors that didn't exist. And then a month later, they're like, oh, yeah, that wasn't real. Congratulations to whoever, their first guy wrote in a mail to say, that's not real. And that became a tradition after that. But
the point I'm in bringing it up is to point out it's been a thing in the games industry way longer than most industries. And it's continued year after year after year. And so this year I wanted to recap some of the bigger, better...
Poor trusty nerds who don't know how to look at anything critically.
Yeah, I mean, I
don't mind any of it. I think usually it's fun. Sometimes it's dumb. I see people that just get so mad about it. I'm just like, who cares? I don't get. I mean, look, I didn't pay attention to a lot of it this year because I was at the film festival.
Right.
I didn't see many things that were.
Well, we're gonna take you through a trip.
The only thing I saw that I noted was Fantasy Flight Games, who makes a card game called Marvel Champions. Their April Fool's thing was the next new character in the game is going to be Spider-Ham.
No.
And then 2 days later, they put up pre-orders. So it's oh, by the way, that wasn't a joke. It's really the next character.
That's the best.
Yeah, so.
Well, here, we're going to run through very quickly some of what I think were the best April Fool's jokes. And you can tell me if you think they're good or not.
Yeah, I guarantee you I don't know probably any of these.
Okay.
I saw maybe two things while I was there.
The first one was for Sonic Frontiers, which is the upcoming open-world Sonic 3D game, although I guess we don't really know exactly what the game's going to be. I think we're assuming that based on the trailer we've seen so far.
I think it's an open-world.
It appears to be that way, but the fake collector's edition for the game, according to Sega of Japan, included a wooden bath bucket, a Sonic print towel, a waterproof Sega Genesis, a non-waterproof Game Gear, and a rubber duck. And then it said it would sell for around $260. What do you think about that one? There was no video release, just this still image.
I feel like we're missing a piece of information about this game that makes that make sense.
Right.
But I like the idea of a waterproof Sega Genesis.
But what's the water theme, right?
Yeah.
Is that like a big deal?
Like, I guess it's like, is it like a hot springs he goes to or something? Is that?
I don't know. Look at the photo. He's actually at a hot spring there.
Yeah.
But it's really just a stuffed animal.
Right. But it's like a bathhouse.
He's in a bathhouse.
thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't understand. Maybe it is a hint at what the game, some part of the game or something. I don't know.
Maybe your checkpoint, your fast travel points are like onsen springs or something, like hot springs.
That would be bizarre, but maybe you're right. I don't know. What do you think about that one?
It's fun, sure. I mean, it's kind of obvious that it's not real. If like a waterproof Genesis and then a non-waterproof Game Gear, that's even funnier. Why wouldn't the Game Gear be the waterproof thing? Because that's the thing you'd probably drop in the
handheld
water.
that you actually take places where it might get wet. Yeah, you're right. But I think the funniest part is the image. The stuffed animal at the bathhouse. I think that's pretty freaking good. Because it makes no sense whatsoever. So anyway, that's Sonic Frontiers. And then PUBG put out a trailer for the BFC, the Big Effin' Chicken. And it didn't actually happen in the game, but they made this trailer of this gigantic chicken that they were going to add to PUBG Battlegrounds. I always place a little more emphasis on these April Fool's jokes when there's actually work involved. Mm-hmm. Like, that image from Sega Japan didn't take that much time, but creating a trailer with a massive chicken inside your game.
Nice Godzilla reference there.
That
one shot is a Godzilla reference.
The whole thing is pretty much, it's kaiju, whatever.
Oh yeah, but the one shot of over the mountain, like that is a direct reference to a shot from the first Godzilla movie. I respect that.
What do you think, man?
Like,
look at the
Fortnite
AC-130 footage.
Fortnite does such weird shit that, like, would it super shock you if this happened?
Existence is futile.
Like, that is like a thing that Fortnite would do on like a Tuesday,
right?
Like on one hand, you're kind of clowning yourself on this one because it's like, hey, what if PUBG like did interesting things?
Yeah, yeah. And someone brought up in chat that Digital Foundry did an analysis of Biomutant. I didn't quite get why they did that. Was Biomutant a thing at Digital Foundry for some reason?
I don't know.
I don't know either. But they did like a whole analysis on Biomutant, which actually has been out now for forever. So
maybe that's a joke. They're doing an ancient game that nobody cares about, or
yeah,
I don't know.
But I didn't actually include that on the list. But I'm glad that Justin Horman brought it up because I did not include it. Let's see. Up next. This is actually my favorite because this one was the most work. So Grasshopper Interactive from Japan did a mashup of No More Heroes and Shadows of the Dam. But the twist is it's a badminton game. And not only that, it's a real badminton game. They basically took characters from No More Heroes and Shadow of the Damned and put them into a badminton game that you can go to itch.io or itch.io. I don't know how do people say that actually?
I've usually heard it itch.io, but I don't know.
Whatever you want to call it, you can go there. The game is free to download and you can actually play the game. And this, to me, not only did they create a trailer, because they had to make a trailer to promote the game, they made the game. It's hard, to me, that's hard to beat. Any April Fool's joke where you actually create a product, and I'll say this too, Grasshopper does this almost every year. It actually releases a game for April Fools. And just imagine, like, when you start every year and you're figuring out your schedule, you having to budget in the time and the resources to create this free game that you're going to release on April Fool's Day. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And it is, again, a playable game, and it's violent. There's, like, blood and gore in the game. This one, to me, is hard to beat, so it is my favorite of all the April Fool's jokes. And again, they do this pretty much every year, so kudos to them. They really take April Fool's Day seriously. That's another thing I like about it, is that the Japanese publishers and developers take it just as seriously as the Western folks do. In some cases, more seriously.
Yeah. They put a lot of effort into it.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
To the point that I think that, like, I think even if you hate the idea of April Fools, you got to respect the hustle on this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it, man. There's another good one, too. That's coming up next. The Fire Emblem Three Houses tea set.
See, like some of these things, like
I would buy this.
Yeah, like the Sonic bath thingy as well. It's like that's stuff that they might actually make in Japan. Like weirder merchandise has been made in Japan. Like there were Hello Kitty TV, like TVs and telephones and vibrators. Like they'll put logos for things on anything.
I honestly thought this might be real because didn't they have like cafes for Fire Emblem or something?
I think they did have like a promotion.
Yeah. Well,
cafes.
tea is obviously a big deal in the actual game, so it makes sense for the property. Sense. Like, I would probably buy this.
Yeah, like I think this would sell.
If you released this
absolutely
as a collector's thing, people would buy it, assuming that the value of it would go like way up. Although tea would probably be perishable, but still, I think it would be pretty cool. But this was also fake. You can't actually go out and buy the Fire Emblem Three Houses tea set. Yet. And then...
Some of these things tend to be like, they're almost pilots programs.
Yeah.
It's like, you know...
If
like
people actually really like it, maybe...
Yeah, like happened with the... I think the first thing that happened with was that Tauntaun sleeping bag.
Oh.
That was an April Fool's joke, and everybody liked it so much they made it. And now it's like they're on like... They've been making it for years as like one of their standard products now.
Which, when you think about it, is so disgusting.
Yeah, that was the joke.
It's great. And then the last one that we have a video for is from Corsair. And it is a one-button mechanical keyboard. The way that they do this is so great. Look at
to pay respects.
This is awesome. Look at this. Like, you can just swap out whatever letter key you want onto it. And then when they do, like, the right-handed, like, and then the left-handed, because you just switch sides, because it's just the same thing on both sides. It's awesome. It's called the K1 RGB.
Fewer choices.
Fewer choices. And I like that they still advertise how good their key switches are.
Yeah, Key switch,
which works everywhere, right? On all their keyboards.
Rumble.
I think that's pretty clever. Yeah.
That's solid.
Yeah, it's a good one. So kudos to Corsair for doing that. And then
isn't that just an old mouse when you think about it?
It is. Like an old, just one
like
button.
One button mouse.
Pretty much. And then there was another one, like Goat Simulator announced that they were going to do a musical with Steve-O. Mm-hmm. They didn't release any media for that or anything. They put out a press release. I think Steve-O put up like something that he did on TikTok or something for it. But those were the better ones, I thought, from this year. What do you think? How would you grade those?
Those are good efforts.
Yeah.
I think I think I got to give it to Grasshopper.
Yeah.
Overall.
You build a game, it's like
everybody wins on that one.
Yeah. The Corsair one's pretty good too though, because I'm assuming they had that built. They built it in CG or something.
Yeah, that was CG.
So that took some work.
I also like I like it when like an April Fool's is sort of like a reference or an acknowledgement of some ongoing complaint or question or running gag or something with
something that fixes something that people have been complaining about for a long time.
Fun. It was one I liked from a while ago, which was there's a channel called Watch It Play that does like really detailed, really good tutorials on board games, how to play them. Mm. And one of the ones that everybody wanted them to do was Star Wars Rebellion, which is a super complicated like Conquer the Galaxy, like a Risk style game. Mm-hmm. Very complicated, and they would never do it because basically they're sponsored. You know, they only do videos if they're sponsored by the game makers.
Yep.
And like so the guy who does them, Rodney, for April Fool's, he's like, okay, everybody asked me to do this, so we're gonna do Star Wars Rebellion. Here's how to play Star Wars Rebellion. And he just sat there for 2 hours and read the instruction manual out loud. Like no video, no demonstration, no cutaways, no B-roll, no nothing. It was just a man with a game instruction manual reading to the camera for 2 hours.
Couldn't even do that now.
And I'm like,
because there's no such thing as an instruction manual.
Oh no, this is a board game. There's a giant.
Yeah, I guess you always have to have one for a board game.
They're huge.
Yeah, they're like little books, I guess.
Yeah. Some of them. Sometimes there's two.
By the way, people, Matt has one of the biggest changes of your house from the last time I was here to when I came back to start doing the show here again, is his collection of board games. Mm-hmm. You have a wall that's as big as the wall behind me that's just shelves just packed with board games. Yeah. It's amazing.
It became one of the things we all started to do
during the pandemic.
Coming back from the pandemic.
Yeah.
Coming back from the lockdown. I was like, here's a good reason to get people to come over and do something. And I like them as art objects. A lot of them's really cool. A lot of them you can play solo and kind of play with them that way. And like, I'm probably going to pare it down.
It's amazing how many he has. I was like blown away.
I went in pretty big. I'm a little bit John Hammond from Jurassic Park when it comes to things. Spared no expense.
Once you get into something, you get into it.
Yeah,
you dive in.
And now I'm starting to be like, okay, now I know what I like, and I know what I like these, and these aren't as good. So I think I can, start letting some of these go. And eventually I'll probably get rid of that second shelf and it'll be a little more normal. But
and these board games aren't like Monopoly or Life.
No, I think people know.
Yeah.
I think people are. Put it this way: the first one that really got me into it was Gloomhaven.
Oh, really?
Which is the biggest, it's the highest rated board game around.
I've even heard of it. Yeah,
but it's like, there's a video game version of it that is actually an excellent recreation of the campaign. Like it's you really aren't missing anything if you just play the version that's on Steam. It's very, very well done, and it doesn't take an hour to set up.
No.
So
anyway, there you go. That's April Fool's 2022. I would want to give high marks to the industry. I think it did a pretty good job. There were dozens more, by the way, that happened that I just didn't bring up. Some better than others. I feel like these were probably the most memorable ones, but I enjoy this about the industry, and I hope it keeps happening. I hope it continues throughout the coming years. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about another crappy studio. Kotaku wrote an article this week about Undead Labs. It's the studio behind the State of Decay franchise.
I feel like I knew that there was shitty things going on with this company, and I don't remember why.
I don't know either, because there really weren't any rumblings. In fact, the one thing in the article...
I remember somebody talking about the guy, like maybe it was just tweets or something, about the guy who like founded or co-founded this being an asshole or something.
Well, so I don't know. The article, one of the things it focused on was the fact that the guy who used to run the studio and founded the studio left when Microsoft bought it. And actually, the angle of the article is, since he left, things have gone down the tubes because Microsoft, this is crazy. The employees there are upset because Microsoft is too hands off. So the studio is actually in Seattle, like just a couple miles away from Microsoft headquarters, Xbox headquarters. And
early on, I remember people were thinking like, oh, they clearly were just founded to be bought by Microsoft because of where they are and what they're doing.
Well, the employees are pissed because Microsoft bought them. The founder cashed out and left, and he's already started his own new thing, and they're getting ready to show their first game and blah, blah, blah. But when he left, like Microsoft was in... I think Microsoft thought that most studios want this. That, okay, once we buy you, we're going to leave you alone and let you do your thing.
You know what you're doing.
Because we bought you because you were good. Well, the employees who work at Undead Labs are like, this has been a nightmare. Like, there's no oversight at the studio now. And so the people who do have some semblance of power have turned into rotten people. And
it's basically become Lord of the Flies over there.
Right. And the problem is that they're trying to make State of Decay 3 right now. Remember when that was announced?
Oh, yeah.
A long time ago. A long time ago. Vaguely, because it was a long time ago. It's hard to remember, right?
It was like the unveiling, the Xbox Series X like reveal event.
And we haven't seen anything of it since.
Just that damn deer.
And the people at Undead are saying that they've been working on this game for 3 years and they still don't know what it is. That basically the studio has just been adrift since it was purchased by Microsoft. Which
seems to happen sometimes, Rare's having that same problem with what's that game? You know that game.
Everwild.
Yeah. It's like they don't know what it is.
Right. They can't figure out what the game needs to become, and which is weird.
Which is doubly weird with this because this is like, just do State of Decay again. What do you?
It's State of Decay.
We just want a State of Decay that doesn't look like ass. How about that?
It runs better than 18 frames a second or whatever on this new hardware that you have to work on. But isn't it ironic that, and I agree with Microsoft, like you'd think if you acquire a company, the big fear is, oh my gosh, they're going to come in and change everything. Like, just think about when Tech TV was bought by G4. And think about the things that we talked about. When we're like, oh, we're going to go down there and they're going to treat us like second-class citizens because we're Tech TV and G4 bought us. And like, we were like, we hope they just leave us alone. I think most companies are that way. I hope that they'll just let us keep doing our thing. And we can just keep creating the art that we want to create.
It sounds like there's people in this company who failed the test of character.
Yeah.
If you want to test someone's character, do not give them, don't give them adversity, give them power.
Yeah. Well, someone asked Pachter in the last round of episodes, like, does he think that Microsoft will mismanage its new studios? And a lot of that, I think that he didn't mention it specifically, but I think the person asking the question was alluding to Rare.
Yeah.
Because of what happened when Microsoft got Rare. Let's be honest, like, Rare is a shadow of what it used to be before it was acquired by Microsoft. And so it was a good question. Do you think that something like that's going to happen? It does appear that is happening with Undead Labs. And so going back to our prior topic about PlayStation acquiring studios, is there a point where it just becomes so big that you can't wrangle and manage it anymore?
I mean, for the most part, these studios seem to run themselves just fine. I still don't know what the hell happened with Rare. Rare, it seems to some degree to be the problem with that was like a lot of the people that made Rare what it was had already gone. By the time they were acquired.
And this kind of happened here too. Their leader
makes you think, maybe that's why Nintendo sold them. They knew
the talent drain.
Yeah.
Had happened. That's possible.
You wouldn't think that this series would require a huge, top-down leadership situation, but what do I know? And if you've got really toxic people in there waiting for a chance to lord it over everybody, that's a whole separate issue.
Yeah.
No organization is going to survive that with no, oversight. It's weird to me that maybe there was just no way to get around them and tell Microsoft this is what's happening here. A smart, tyrannical middle manager is going to make sure there's no way to end run around them.
Yeah. That they close off the channels of communication so that the stuff can't get messaged out.
Yeah, that happened to me once, but with a direct supervisor, that there was no way around, and people couldn't figure out a way to contact anyone over her head. But what they didn't know that I was living with the assistant to the VP of the district. So we've solved that problem.
But it is a bad position to be put in because you're excited. You're acquired by Microsoft. You're like, everything's going to be great. We have this stability financially. We're not going to worry about losing our jobs. But then suddenly your job sucks.
Yeah. Suddenly Kyle is a jerk.
Yeah. Yeah. And not you.
No.
Why does it seem like so many gaming companies suck? Do you think that this isn't just gaming, that it's just corporate America in general?
I think it's corporate America to some degree, but also I think gaming places seem to be susceptible to it, both in terms of sort of the sweatshop culture that has sprung up around game development, and also because a lot of people working in game development are not the most socially adept people in the world.
Yeah.
And they're either easily taken advantage of, or they fall easily prey to being bullies because they were bullied. Joss Whedon, anyone.
Now, I'll admit, some of the quotes...
Joss Whedon's a good example of someone who, came up having been bullied and being ostracized and having all those problems, and as soon as he got some power, started as, well, now it's my turn.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot in that space.
I will say this, too. Some of the quotes that they got were, I wouldn't say they're contradictory, but there were some people who worked there who didn't see that there was a big problem, and then there were some people who said, oh my gosh, this is a nightmare.
I mean, there are some people, like I've said many times, predators know who they can do that in front of and who they can't.
Yeah, you have mentioned that before.
There's tons of people at G4 who had horrible times that talk about that, and did I see much of that? No, because the people doing that knew better than to do it in front of me. Just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it wasn't happening. Especially in a company a big company, or a company that's isolated like Undead Labs would be, because who's wandering in from Microsoft and checking on the goods for Undead Labs? They don't seem to have an actual deadline for this game. So,
That was the other thing that they said, is that they don't have a deadline.
Yeah.
That they're just letting them just figure it out. And they're like, and they also felt like just managerially, they needed like a rudder in the water.
Yeah, you need something to put the fear of God into you and get the work done.
Just to make you realize that you have to finish this at some point. It just can't go on forever.
Some people thrive with no structure like that, but some people need a deadline. I need a deadline.
Yeah.
Like, I even, if I get a deadline a week out, I'm not going to do that work until the day before.
That's I'm not like that at all, man.
I
couldn't. I would. This Sifted would have died 4 years ago if I.
Which is why I tend to say it's just like it's better for me if I get, especially like a freelance job or something. I'm like, oh, you need that tomorrow? Cool.
Yeah.
Because that's no different than if it was a week away.
Yeah.
Because I would do the same amount of work in the same amount of time.
People in chat are defending Rare. They're saying, Rare's doing fine because of Sea of Thieves. Is it? Is it doing fine because of Sea of Thieves?
I mean, Sea of Thieves is probably their first successful thing they've done since Microsoft bought
But
them,
define successful, meaning it lasted like a couple years before it was shut down.
It's been years. It's like half a decade old now.
Is it that old?
Yeah, it was like 2015 or something.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't really seen like the financial whatevers of Sea of Thieves. Like it's still going. Does that mean it's made a lot of money?
I mean, it must be making enough money for them to keep it alive.
I think it just means that there's people playing it. I don't know if that means it's actually making money. But what else has it done? You got to realize it was sold to Microsoft.
Sea of Thieves turned 4 a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So you got to realize it was sold. Was that 2001?
Yeah, well, when was grabbed by the Ghoulies?
It was 2001. It's been 21 years since it was sold to Microsoft. And all you can say is Sea of Thieves? No, it's not fine. It's not doing good. Think about that. 21 years. And what do we have to show from them? We have Grabbed by the Ghoulies. We have...
You've got the bottom of Avatar shoes.
We got a bunch of Kinect games. That's
Viva Pinata, which people like.
Yeah, that was moderately okay. Not a hit, though.
No. Bunch of Game Boy Advance stuff. Conquer Live and Reloaded, which is not as good as the original. Cameo, Perfect
Which
Dark
they
Zero.
butchered
Yeah,
and
Perfect Dark
changed
Zero's
from
not
the
good.
GameCube version of the game when it was actually interesting.
Viva Pinata, Jetpack Refueled, Viva Pinata 2, Viva Pinata on the DS, Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. I don't think... And then they did the Kinect era, the Kinect Sports.
Yeah.
Forever. Killer Instinct, that was pretty good. That was decent.
They didn't do that, though. That was Iron Galaxy.
Iron Galaxy, but they were involved.
I mean, they licensed the IP. Like, they didn't do any work on the game.
Sea of Thieves,
And that's it.
Rare Replay, Battletoads, and theoretically Everwild.
But Rare didn't make Battletoads either.
They get credit for it.
Well, they didn't make it.
Under supervision of Rare.
Right. Meaning they just gave them the license and said, don't do this, do that. With the characters or whatever, the IP.
Yeah, it's good enough to get an executive producer credit.
I mean, is that good? Is that Rare doing okay? I don't think so. I don't think so at all.
I wouldn't call that a tremendously successful run.
It's not successful at all. So anyway,
Certainly
I just saw people going at each other about it in the chat.
Certainly not comparison to what made them an attractive purchase in the first
Right.
place.
Yeah. I mean, and granted, if you look back now, I think they only paid like a couple $100 million for Rare back then. Now that's a steal. Although that's what Sony got Insomniac for too. So
yeah, but when you're looking at like we're going to buy the company that made Donkey Kong Country and Killer Instinct and GoldenEye and Perfect Dark and Blast Corps and Jet Force Gemini and Donkey Kong 64, Banjo-Kazooie, this is probably not what you were thinking.
What you signed up for. Yeah. They've been a huge disappointment. But to be fair, Microsoft, I mean, in general, has not really mismanaged its studios in general. So there's one example, Rare, and now it sounds like there might be a second with Undead Labs. But in general, I feel like Microsoft isn't notorious for like getting a studio and ruining it, so to speak.
No,
so,
they don't do that.
Yeah,
and they certainly don't shut things down before their time, and they don't.
Yeah, it does appear though that Microsoft is maybe growing faster than it can handle.
I don't think so. This feels like just like why would you think that was going to happen here? You know, like maybe it's a symptom of like sort of making the assumption that all these companies you're buying are able to kind of police themselves properly, but like it doesn't seem like that's a super bad assumption to make. Certainly, it's probably safer to make that assumption than it is to do the opposite and micromanage everything.
Yeah.
It just seems like it's probably a lesson in like, okay, you got to check in with some of these places a little more often, especially when you're talking about something without an established or well-known corporate culture. And it, look, it does seem like they've tried to rehabilitate Rare to some degree over the last generation or so. And they can, clearly after this, they will definitely keep another eye on Undead Labs.
You would think. This is bringing up the initiative, but that was a studio that they just created. That's not something they acquired.
Smushed everything together.
And that is a disaster, mind you. I mean, it is a disaster. They've lost, basically their biggest studio heads because they're bringing these other studios to help make Perfect Dark. Mm-hmm. And the people who are there to make Perfect Dark are like, wait a minute, why are you replacing us with these other studios? I think Crystal Dynamics is one of them. They're bringing all these people to help with the development of the game. So I don't blame people if they're like, wait a minute, I was hired as a studio head here, and now all of a sudden here's all these other people coming in working on the project. But that was a studio that Microsoft created. Mm-hmm. That was not an acquisition.
Well, the other thing is that's not really going to be a factor with Undead Labs because nobody really makes a game like this.
Yeah.
State of Decay, for all its jankiness, is kind of a singular thing.
It's unique.
Nobody really makes anything like that. So I can totally see being like, okay, you guys have done 2 of these. You're the only game in town when it comes to making these this weird survival open world zombie simulator. Farming.
It is an odd mix.
Permadeath. It's such a weird conflict. It's a cool.
I'm glad they do it.
Yeah,
I'm glad
for
someone
sure.
does it.
But it's like, I can totally see why you'd be like, okay, you guys know what you're doing. You've done 2 of these, and just do another one, and we'll talk to you in 6 months. But like, then this all goes to hell.
I think a big part was losing the leader.
Some of that. I mean, it seems like the crux of this is just you had bad personalities on board. And middle management was ready to lord it over some people, and probably independent of whether State of Decay 3 is an easy or hard game to make, or whatever. Like, I think that's what's happening there. Because also, State of Decay 2 has had a pretty steady stream of content throughout that period. Like, they're still putting like really big updates up. My brother-in-law plays that game constantly with my niece and some of his other friends.
Really?
Oh yeah.
How old is the niece?
She's 13.
Oh, okay.
But they've been playing for a couple of years. So.
Wow.
She doesn't
jumped in early.
She has no. She's like me. She doesn't. Nothing bothers her in that regard.
Yeah.
As long as you're not killing animals.
Fair enough. So anyway,
she may balk on the zombie animals in the third one. I will say that.
Oh really?
Although I think she would appreciate the dark humor of the deer eating the wolf. So I don't know. Gonna be interesting if it ever comes out.
Yeah. Who knows what's gonna happen with that game now? It looks like it's in development hell. It's kind of visionless right now.
The good news is someone should be able to just come in and be like, just make State of Decay again.
3. Yeah, just add a number on there. No one else is making it.
Change the title screen and say 3.
Yeah.
And slap some flesh things on like the deer. And
you still have your USP, your unique selling proposition.
Yeah.
Which is the key to business, is doing something other people aren't doing. So you're right. Like, just don't overthink it. Just make another State of Decay on a system that can run it like better than 18 frames a second.
Yeah.
Even that B-roll we were watching, the State of Decay 2 there, was like, ooh.
Yeah, it's a little rough. They have greatly improved it, I will say.
They have,
like, if you load that thing up now, especially on the Xbox Series X, like it's a different game.
Yeah.
It's not the game that I gave up playing because my car kept disappearing from the parking space.
That's right. Or did you notice the one guy who was riding shotgun with me in the van, when he bailed out,
and he just like 4 frames a second,
like,
online
just
connection
disappeared
out.
out of the van. That's funny. So anyway, if you had your hopes up for State of Decay 3 coming anytime soon, and obviously coming to Game Pass as well, you're going to be waiting a lot.
Probably not getting a trailer for that at Keeley's events
I highly
in the
doubt
summer.
it. Yep. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk next about the biggest game announcement of the week, and one I know, Matt, you were probably really excited about. Return to Monkey Island was announced this week, something that a lot of people thought would never, ever happen.
Including Ron Gilbert.
Because Ron Gilbert had lost the IP and had gone to Disney and said, I will buy it back. Because Disney owned the IP, and he's like, they're not going to do anything with it. He had offered to buy it back. I think they refused, and then there was a fan petition that ended up getting like 30,000 signatures or whatever. And that was like 2 years ago.
Something like
that. And what it seems like is instantly Disney was like, let's do it. Once they saw the petition or whatever, I think that, because the timing is working out perfect, because the game is coming out this year. It came from nowhere, and it's like almost done. Although the trailer for it doesn't show much. It's just a little teaser trailer, just enough to get the fans excited. And it is pretty funny, even though it's just set kind of in this one scene here.
It looks very Broken Age.
It does, yeah. And didn't he work on Broken Age? Right, yeah, that's what I thought. But you're right, the art style, everything about it looks very much like Broken Age, which is also a great game, by the way. Yeah. Was that our Adventure Game of the Year for 1 year, I think?
I can't remember.
It may have won one of our awards, I think. How do you feel about this, Matt? How do you feel about the Monkey Island franchise in general?
I'm not actually a huge Monkey Island fan.
Really? Interesting. I thought you were.
No, it's the LucasArts point-and-click adventure that I never quite got into.
Oh, I did not. For some reason, I thought you were a big fan.
No.
Wow, okay.
I mean, I like them, but they're probably the bottom of the barrel for me in terms of the classic LucasArts adventures. Like, I definitely like the Maniac Mansions and Loom and the Dig, especially the Dig, more than these. The other thing that's a little weird about this is, there's some fandom division over the third and fourth games, Escape and Curse. There's people that think like one's terrible. And
Game Manual in chat says, "Does this undo Monkey Island 3?"
It does. It does.
Because it's a sequel to 2.
It's a sequel to 2. He is using characters and ideas from 3 and 4, but he is not considering them to be canon to the story, which has divided some people because there's people that really like Curse of Monkey Island. There's people that think Curse of Monkey Island is an abomination in the eyes of God. I don't really have an opinion on those two. They all kind of blur together for me. I'd say 2 is the best one.
What's the subtitle for 2 again?
I think
it's like Rusty's something or other. It's a weird subtitle.
I thought it was LeChuck's Revenge.
LeChuck's Revenge. That's it. Yeah.
But
that is what it is. Yep.
So it's it's okay. Sure, cool.
What did you not like about the old games?
Well, I didn't like it. Just it didn't. I didn't care for whatever reason. I mean, I thought they were kind of funny, but I also just like. I don't know. The pirate thing doesn't do much for me. I'm not a pirate person.
Me either. I don't know why, but like Sea of Thieves. Yeah. I was not a huge fan of Sea of Thieves. I'm just not into the whole swashbuckling life, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Ashes in the Hourglass says he didn't make Broken Age. I thought he worked with them on Broken Age. I thought he
consulted on or something, but I can't remember.
I thought he was involved in the project.
If he didn't, then they were sure channeling him.
Yeah, he did. He says he did Thimbleweed Park. I thought for sure
he did do Thimbleweed Park.
He had something to do with Broken Age.
I mean, he wasn't like a lead on that or anything. I mean, I'm sure I'm sure Schaefer talked to him, but I don't think he was. I don't remember that being part of the Kickstarter pitch when they would have mentioned that. Probably.
Yeah,
I'm sure they had him try it. But
Vincent says that Gilbert said it's a sequel to 2, but 3 is not taken out of canon.
Okay, so it's just Curse then.
Yeah,
everybody hates Curse.
Yeah.
The fourth one is widely considered a disaster.
Why do you think so many people like this franchise?
I mean, there wasn't really anything like it at the time, and it was, certainly. I mean, Maniac Mansion and Loom to some degree, but this was one of the few funny games of its kind at the time. After Maniac Mansion, it also was it helped codify the scum system. So while Maniac Mansion is entertaining, it also was one of the ones where you still had to find the word and figure out how to
right.
And this was, but this was like one of the follow-ups to Loom, where it was like everything is done with the mouse. You don't really need, you just need to click on things and talk to people. It also has the combat system that is entirely insult based, which everybody really enjoyed.
Yeah.
It's just well written, especially for the time.
Yeah.
I'm not slamming.
It's got some jokes.
Yeah. Of the LucasArts adventures of the 90s, it just wasn't the one that spoke to me in the same way that like The Dig or Grim Fandango did. But they are good. And it's certainly nobody. I don't think anybody ever thought Ron Gilbert would make another Monkey Island game. Not that they didn't want to, but just like trying to get Disney to pay attention to any of this stuff is very difficult. So it's impressive that this actually worked for once.
Yeah, I mean. How much
look
IP
how many,
does Disney own at this point?
Well, look, I mean, that's the other thing is this is not Disney. This is Lucasfilm.
Right.
Lucasfilm owns this, and Lucasfilm makes its own creative decisions. Disney doesn't dictate things. So you had to make and look at all the things Lucasfilm has in its vault, and they're just not doing anything with outside of maybe putting a remaster, not even a remaster, but a version that works on modern OSs on GOG and Steam. Like that's about the best you can hope for with like The Dig. We're never getting a remake of The Dig, but like which Spielberg was actually involved in. That game, you want to talk about development hell? That game took like 10 years to make.
Jeez.
Starring Robert Patrick. But I mean, it's actually a good sign that they're willing to do anything with an IP that is not Star Wars related.
Yeah, so I'm surprised that it came back because I just don't know if there's a thirst for this IP. I only ever played the first one.
There is,
and I thought it was okay.
There is amongst the people that love it. I think as long as they're budgeting with an eye towards how many people they expect to sell this to, and I'm sure they are. This isn't going to be.
This is like a 10-man team, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
to make this game.
It's going to be basically the same kind of team that made the originals. Those are not huge teams either.
Yeah. But Gilbert is on board. He's doing the writing. He's like kind of the project lead, and I think that makes people feel safe.
Yeah.
It makes me feel safe.
Trying to sell you Loom right there.
Yep. Yeah. So it sounds like you're no more excited for this than I am, because I'm not really that excited for it at all.
Not especially,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll probably play it, but this is just not one of the games I have huge nostalgia for in terms of those LucasArts games.
Yeah.
Partly because I didn't play them until later, because I had to pick and choose the computer games I bought or asked to be given for Christmas and birthdays, and other themes tended to appeal to me more than the pirate game. So this is not one. Full Throttle was way more interesting to me than this.
Do you think that they'll upgrade the game in any way? Do you think it'll take in some of the new concepts and ideas that have been imparted into adventure games since, like branching story paths and things like that?
I don't know. I think that depends.
Will fans be okay with that?
I think that depends how Gilbert wants to play. I'm pretty sure we're going to get Gilbert's, idea of what a sequel should have been all these years for the most part. I don't know, and I don't really know much about his philosophies these days. So I guess we'll see.
Yep. So anyway, it's coming this year. We do not have a solid release date. We don't even have platforms for it yet either.
I'm going to say late.
Yeah, me too. That'd be my guess. Q4, and I would also guess probably every platform.
Almost, yeah. This seems like it would be fine for everything.
Maybe even like mobile.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see mobile.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not all on the same day, but I'm sure it will come to pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Just like Broken Age did, really.
It did, ultimately. Yeah. That was a Kickstarted game, wasn't it?
Yeah. That was one of the original, successful Kickstarter video games. It was
and
like,
it took
you can do this.
a while for them to get that out.
It took 5 years.
Yeah.
4 years.
But there you go. Return to Monkey Island again. No hard release date, no hard platforms, but probably end of the year, and every platform would be our guess. Okay, time for our last topic for GameFace 295. We're getting close to episode 300 here, Matt. Close enough that I got to start thinking about what I'm gonna do for episode 300. Just 5 weeks away. And our last topic for 295 is the fact that Unreal Engine 5 launched today. And there's been a lot of build-up leading up to the launch of Unreal. And in fact, today Epic put up a 40-minute video about Unreal Engine 5, which was really boring. But Tim Sweeney was in it, and he has to be the least charismatic CEO that is as successful as he is in any industry.
Oh, I don't know. There's some CEOs.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, his... no offense to him, but...
I mean, you think the General Mills CEO is a wild dude?
I don't know. I've never seen him, but for someone coming from a dynamic industry like gaming, Tim Sweeney is not particularly good at presenting.
He's of the John Carmack school.
He is, yeah.
So
he's a little awkward.
Gets results, though.
He does. Oh, he's amazing. He's a genius. Let's be honest. He's a genius. He's one person in this industry I feel very safe saying is a genius. And he led the presentation, but eventually he did turn it over to people who kind of drove the whole presentation. Probably the biggest thing that came out today...
I'd rather listen to Tim Sweeney than Zuckerberg. That's a good point, Case Money.
Yeah, because Zuckerberg's just
at least I don't
weirdo.
At least I don't suspect Tim Sweeney is a
robot.
It's like a mandroid. Yeah,
Dude, he is weird. I do wonder sometimes if he's a real person.
Yeah,
not Tim Sweeney.
No. Zuckerberg is a weird dude. You see him sort of engage smile.exe, and it just sort of stops.
It's bizarre.
I love that one. They did a video years ago where they tried to show his morning routine or something, and there's a scene where he's eating toast in the kitchen, and it was it looks like an alien trying to this is how you humans do it, right? It's have you never eaten toast before, dude? That's not how that works. So weird.
It is weird. The big announcements that came today with the launch
just
of
waiting
Unreal
for his
Engine
eyes
5.
to blink sideways.
The big announcements that came today with the launch of Unreal Engine 5 is that a new Tomb Raider is in development, being developed on Unreal Engine 5. It is being created by Crystal Dynamics. That studio is getting spread real thin.
They're busy.
I don't know how they're doing it.
They must have staffed up.
They had to have. Because they are the initiative now, too. They're making Perfect Dark, and now they're making the new Tomb Raider, which I'd be okay with Perfect Dark being kind of like Tomb Raider, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I think that
makes sense.
That's a valid format choice for Perfect Dark, especially these days.
I think so.
You don't need to do a shooter again.
Yeah. But they did not release any sort of a trailer or anything for the new Tomb Raider. And then the other thing that they showed was, I'm not 100% sure, and I don't know if you've seen this yet, Matt, but this might be a tease for Gears of War 6. It's from the Coalition. And the Coalition, for whatever reason, if you go back and look, has been this big partner for Unreal Engine 5 all along. So you can go back last year and the year before when they first started talking about Unreal Engine 5, and a lot of this stuff is working with the Coalition on Gears stuff. And I think Gears from the very beginning the very first game was made on Unreal.
Oh yeah, the earliest stuff we saw for Unreal 3 was all this were locusts and things like that. At GDC, I remember Cliff doing that demo, and Rod Ferguson and everyone doing that demo for us, and be like, I'm like, so what is this game? And they're like, oh, it's not a game, it's just. I'm like, bro, and like 2 years later, here's Gears of War, but like,
yeah.
You know what this reminds me of? It makes me think of.
Notice the text at the top.
Yeah,
test assets do not represent a game product.
You know, it makes me think of that. What's the Sony game? The with the werewolves, the Victorian steampunk werewolf. You know, the
1843 or whatever the hell it was called.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. 1890
1866 or
yeah, 1863.
That's a good sign that you named your game something stupid, guys, when I can't remember the name of the order. The order
2686.
Nah, the order 1886 or 1883, something like that.
No one else knows it either, but they did know the order part of it, and we've forgotten that it is 1886. Yeah,
the order, that's right.
Yeah, you're right though, it does give off that same vibe.
Yeah, I think a guy in the order actually looked a lot like him too.
Do you think it's Gear 6, a hint at Gear 6?
Maybe. I mean, it's certainly tech they'll be using in it.
And if that's the case, hot damn. Because...
I mean, the least surprising thing in the world is that there's going to be a Gears of War game
built on Unreal
Engine 5. I mean...
And then we had the announcement, about 2 weeks ago, with CD Projekt Red, where it's bailing on the Red Engine, and all its games going forward are going to be built on Unreal Engine 5. But not only that... it is going to be a partner with Unreal and help Unreal develop tools for other developers to create open-world games with.
Yeah, which is one of Unreal's weaknesses.
It is. And well documented and well known as well. I mean, a lot of developers know if they're building an open-world game in the past, they probably shouldn't work with Unreal Engine.
That's why so many companies like CD Projekt Red and Monolith, if you were making an open world or even a large world, you didn't use Unreal. You made your own engine usually.
Yeah. And I think proof positive of that is the first big demo for Unreal Engine 5
was the Matrix.
Matrix. And it's in this huge open world. I mean, right there. They show you. Yeah. Look at what Unreal Engine 5 can do.
That looks like
it really is ridiculous, man.
I know there's no real AI happening. In a real game, there'd be a lot more stuff happening that wouldn't allow you to dedicate so much to the visuals.
Yeah.
But like...
hot damn.
It is insane that you can just download that and play that on your damn game system.
On your PS5. I know. It's insane.
This is not like, running on a dev kit or no, you can go play this right now on your PS5.
It's free. You can go download it right now and it's real time and playable.
Yeah, I showed
moderately playable.
I showed a clip of this to some of my movie filmmaker friends and they thought it was drone footage.
Oh, really?
They thought it was real. They thought it was drone footage.
I believe it. Like, it's crazy how good it looks. Do you think Unreal Engine 5 will dominate next-gen development? It's a little weird that it's kind of launching so late, although developers have been working on it for a while.
And I think, it's been speculated by more than just us that this generation is going to last a while. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably true.
Yeah, it's probably not too late to get it out there.
I think it depends what these things are going to look like, but if this proves to be, if the partnerships with CD Projekt Red and Coalition prove to be very fruitful and it becomes an easy thing to work with and it could, that happened to Unreal Engine 3. It became basically the industry standard.
That shooter that we just saw, by the way, is a demo called Lyra. I don't know if it's ultimately going to become a game from Epic or not, but in the 37-minute presentation, there was a huge chunk of time dedicated to it. Mm-hmm. So my guess is it probably will eventually be released.
Yeah, and you got shorts and remember Unreal is also going to be a big deal in film because of what Disney has done with the volume with Mandalorian and shooting all these things in there. That was one of the big discussions at the Phoenix Film Festival was people talking about will we be we want to shoot this thing that's going to be kind of sci-fi oriented, but we can't afford to build the sets. But could we afford to build them in Unreal?
Right.
And use a volume style thing?
Well, I mean, look at it. I mean, it's photorealistic. Another big thing for Unreal Engine is augmented reality. So John Slusser, I've talked about him before. He was the guy who initially funded game trailers when Brandon and Jeff Groats, it was the idea they were working on in the garage. Jeff Groats knew John Slusser, who was wealthy. And they went to him and was like, hey, you want to fund this? And he did. He ended up being my boss for 7 years. He's an awesome guy. Well, when Game Trailers folded, he went back to his old company, which is this company called The Famous Group. And they have become this augmented reality juggernaut since he left Game Trailers. In fact, he just bought his own plane. To put it in perspective, like, they have exploded. So I don't know if you've seen it. Like, I know you don't watch football or whatever, but like a lot of the AR that's kind of bleeding edge was coming from the NFL last season. Like, there was this one thing that made it through social media of a panther up on the scoreboard that would jump down on the field and run all over the field. Like, his company did all that stuff, and all of that is built in Unreal Engine. So the next wave of AR also is going to be coming from Unreal Engine 5. Again, Tim Sweeney he's a genius. He has turned this little company that made shooters into this juggernaut. It's really amazing what he has done in one lifetime. And he's still young. He's still got a lot of years left to do more amazing things. But I do think that Unreal will become the dominant development platform.
Certainly in the AAA space.
Yeah, with all due respect to Unity and all the other engines, like,
I think Unity's got some good stuff going on right now, but this is all next level.
It is. It's impressive, to say the least. And the fact that you can use it for free, like, you and I can go download this now and just start building stuff with it. And if we ever sell anything with it, then we do owe some money. But you can just download, and that's what's really cool, though, is like, if you think back to like when we started in television, everyone on TV edited it in Avid. Avid was this thing that you had to spend like $30,000 to get a license for. Like, you and I could not just get Avid and learn how to cut films. But in the gaming space, the de facto tool that people use to make games is free. You can download it right now. If you're a 13-year-old kid, you can download this and you can start learning how to make games. And that's smart too, because what you're doing is you're future-proofing your technology. You're guaranteeing in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, all these people that learn how to work in Unreal are going to be in the workforce. And what are they going to? They're all going to know how to use Unreal. The whole thing is just genius. And ultimately, it's a great product. So it's awesome. And congratulations to Epic on finally launching Unreal Engine 5 today. I cannot wait to start playing games built on this technology, because it is amazing. And it is, I mean, we're really talking about Uncanny Valley here at this point.
Makes you think like, okay, so the Tomb Raider discussions had to have been going on when they made this, because this demo is Tomb Raider.
It is, right. Well, yeah. And notice the announcement today.
Yeah.
It coincides with this. This was the
this is the original.
This was the PlayStation 5 Unreal Engine 5 demo that they released a while ago. And it's impressive. It looks amazing, and it's like a year and some old. But you're right, there's Tomb Raider. So they didn't release a trailer today. They had released a trailer like a year and a half ago for it. But it's amazing to see what Unreal Engine has become. Because remember, the first Unreal Engine that became popular, all the games looked the same. Like Gear. They all looked like Gears. They all had like characters that had this weird kind of, I don't even know how to describe it, like this sheen to them.
Yeah, there was a plastic element to
it. And the characters also kind of stood out from the backgrounds.
The Resident Evil engine has a similar effect.
It does. Yep. You're absolutely right. Same thing. I don't even know how to explain what it is. It's like this gloss on everything.
They don't do. It's a solved problem in modern Unreal, where like, and a lot of some other engines where like, it's basically it was an interim step in learning how to, or having the power maybe to be able to do the scattering of light under the skin, and how like, you know, being able to see kind of veins under the skin, or like how the blood flows under the skin. If you don't have that, skin looks dead. It looks like you know, the plasticky look. Like, it's another way to describe that is corpse-ish. Like a corpse will look like that.
Yeah, like waxy.
Yeah, waxy. So that's basically what was happening there. And now you look at that where, you know, where the light shines through someone's ear, and you can kind of see the pink of it being, you know, seeing the blood in there. Like all that is simulated now. Yeah, it's amazing. So that's one of the reasons that looks. Same with the eyes. One of the reasons the eyes look so good is they're now simulating through ray tracing the light bouncing through the cornea. Yeah, and that makes it look alive. It makes it look like a real eye to us. Like, and that is one of the most impressive tricks they're doing now in the modern engines, especially Unreal. Is like, because we are hardwired to recognize, you know, eyes as real or fake. Yeah, and they're getting to the point where it's hard to tell.
It's right on the edge. Mellowax says in chat, we should all be making shit. You should be. I am. We're making shit right now. But you guys should absolutely be making your own shit. Because if I know one thing, it's that our audience is smart and tech savvy, and you guys can make some amazing stuff. And I'll promise you this too: if you do make some cool stuff, we will feature it on GameFace and on Sifted. We've had a couple developers in our community that had made small indie projects, and we ran their trailers on Sifted and did what we could to help. So get out there and make it happen, man. It's cheap. It's free. If you're a 12 or 13-year-old watching the stream right now, which there may be one of you or none of you, but if you are, go download Unreal Engine 5. Literally, give yourself a career. Like, start now. In 5 years, you'll be so good at that, you won't even have to go to college. You can just start making games right away. So that's the part of the industry that has evolved that I am really happy about, is the access that people have now. It's not this exclusive club where only rich kids can do it. You don't need this crazy powerful PC. You do need a moderately powerful PC. I'm not going to exaggerate, but you don't need like an SGI workstation like you needed like back in the day, like some Silicon Graphics thing that costs like 30 grand or whatever. You can build yourself a nice little rig and you can start making games. And
if you can find any hardware these days.
Yeah, and people always ask me, they're like, how do you get into development? You got to make games.
Yeah,
they won't care that you went to Full Sail University if you can do it.
The biggest thing is like is to go to GDC with a portfolio of some kind, and especially if you're talking about an artist, you want a portfolio of your concept art or whatever, different genres. If you're going to GDC to be a developer or programmer, you want to have a thumb drive with stuff they can load up and play. Yeah. Show them what you got. Like that is the most important thing.
Or even just models. If you just want to model characters or enemies or whatever, just take a thumb drive with all that information.
Because they know there's no barrier to that other than your own ambition at this point.
Yep.
And they want to see that
you've
been able to do it.
Yeah, your artistic skill.
You remember when Unreal couldn't do hair?
Yeah, when it was just like plastic pieces folded on.
Everybody was bald or had the same two hairstyles or dreadlocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was everyone was braided in some way.
Cornrows, stuff like that. Yep. Yeah. Oh, how the times have changed. It looks amazing. So I can't wait to start playing stuff made on Unreal Engine 5. It shouldn't be that long. All right. That's it for the main show of GameFace 295. We got some time to answer some questions. In the chat, go at Sifted Games. That way we can pluck them out of your conversations. iViz, thank you for Twitch Prime, man. Appreciate it. Beginning of the show, end of the show. Always the best time to subscribe with Twitch Prime. We can call you out and thank you live on the show, which is what I love to do. So if you can always remember, if you join the show a little later and you know you're going to stick around to the end, wait until the end to use Twitch Prime. That way I can thank you personally, just like Texture Glitch just did. Thank you for Twitch Prime, brother. Appreciate it. Here comes JM Rain dropping the subs. Another reason to always watch the show live at twitch.tv/SiftedGames. People in our chat just give away subs every episode without fail. JM Rain every week giving away subs to our audience, which is awesome. Okay, let's get to some questions. Let me get our Give Me Credit crawl running to give credit to the people who are making this show happen by pledging at $30 or more per month. Without you guys, I wouldn't be here. So thank you very much. And let's go to chat. Kevin Rafa will name that game return. Actually, it almost returned today because someone sent me some game codes to give away as a prize. But I got the codes too late to get them into the show. So next week, Name That Game will return. However, it is going to be different. And I'll share with you now how it's going to be different. Beginning next week, and I may fluctuate between the old way with clues and this way, but beginning next week, Name That Game, you're going to have to guess the name of the game by looking at screenshots. So I will be putting screenshots up on the screen, and you're going to have to guess the name of the game based on the screenshots. Now, I will be intelligently cropping them to only show you maybe just like a character's shoes, or maybe just their belt, or maybe just their jacket, or whatever. Little things that may jog your memory about a character, or a scene in a game, or a boss in a game, or an enemy in a game. That'll jog your memory so that you can guess what the game is. So that's the way it'll be next week, but I'm reserving the ability to go back to the old clues way that we were doing it before. I just think it'll be fun to mix it up and use some multimedia, because this is a video podcast. Okay, but actually, now that I think about it, a lot of people do listen to the show audio only, and it won't work very well for them, but maybe that'll convince them to start watching the show. So anyway, that's how it's going to happen. Back next week. Good question. Ian Esquire, thank you for the bits, man. Appreciate it. Oh, wow, there's a ton in here. Squishy Muffin. Skyrim is 11 years old. Actually, I'm going to bring up the chat here so everyone can see what everyone's asking. Skyrim is 11 years old. Wow. Exactly, wow. When Elder Scrolls 6 eventually rolls out, it'll be even older. Will the series still have enough cachet with younger gamers?
Yes.
With younger gamers?
It won't matter.
No?
Most
you
people,
think old heads like us are going to lead the way? And
no, I think because it doesn't matter.
They just market it again.
You just market it again. Most people who bought Skyrim have no idea it's the 5th game in the series. Because they call it Skyrim. It's not Elder Scrolls 5. It's Skyrim.
Just called Skyrim. Yeah, you're right.
Like Elder Scrolls 6 will be known as by whatever world, land it takes place in.
Yeah.
And that'll be that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's like it doesn't really it doesn't matter anymore.
No.
You can market anything to anyone. If you have enough money and you're smart enough, you can sell an ice cube to an Eskimo. You just can. And these game publishers are really good at it. So, yeah, I don't think it'll have any... I don't think the cachet with younger players matters anymore. You can create the cachet very quickly.
Yeah, they'll play what the cool thing is.
All it takes is one trailer at some convention or in a state of play or whatever.
Or the ability to play it off Game Pass for free. Like there's no barrier to playing Elder Scrolls 6. There will not be a problem.
Now that I think about it, Matt, are you surprised that Microsoft hasn't launched its own version of like a Direct? It doesn't really do it.
Doesn't really have that, no.
That's weird. I never thought
they don't
about
have anything
that.
to show yet.
What?
They don't have anything to show yet.
I guess, but I'm just saying in general. Why hasn't it happened already?
I think they might once they finally start rolling stuff out on a regular basis from these new acquisitions.
Yeah.
Like next year, I'd say keep an eye out.
Yeah, something to look forward to. It'll be interesting to see how they do it. Although at this point, it seems like it's settled law. Like there's just a way that they do it. Like Nintendo started it, and now PlayStation does basically the same thing. So I wouldn't expect like some crazy like revelation or anything. Next up, Congrim 1. Shane, Better Call Saul's last season starts in a few weeks, and I know you're a fan. I think Matt is too. Before it starts, and any leaks start to trickle out, actually the reviews popped up yesterday for the last season, and I did not read them. But anyway, before leaks start to trickle out, any predictions or thoughts on who survives and who will meet their end as it concludes? Oh, well, obviously he can't die because he needs to carry on.
Yeah, everyone who's in Breaking Bad is probably going to be fine.
But she's going to die. I mean, she's not in Breaking Bad, and they're together. So either she dies or something really awful. And I think that's the whole thing with this season, is that you know that something bad is going to happen with her. Either she's going to die. In the last season, she started getting mixed in with the criminal element, where she was shielded from it before. And not only was she not bothered by it, at first she kind of was, but eventually she embraced it, and she became kind of the aggressor in that circle. And so that was the precursor to what everyone I think knows, is that something bad is going to happen to her in this season. I don't know what it is, but it's been bothering me thinking about it, because I love that character. I love her. I love that actress. She's really good. So I think that's probably what I would guess is going to happen, but I'm like really dreading like seeing it happen. But that show is great, by the way. If you guys have not, if anyone watching this show or listening to this show has not watched Better Call Saul, and I wouldn't even say that you need to like Breaking Bad to like it, because it is an entirely different show with the same tone, really. You should start watching it now, because the new season launches here in like 2 weeks, I think. Then it's the final season. So I've actually been watching lately on YouTube some of the iconic scenes from Breaking Bad. Like I just watched the Gus death scene yesterday, which is just, the way they shot that is just masterful.
Yep.
It just one of the best scenes in a TV show in the last 10 years, I think. He walks out of there and you're like, no way, he freaking lived. And then the camera
straightens the tie.
It's so great. It is so great.
Well, he can't go out looking like a mess.
Yeah, he straightens his tie. It's so awesome. If you have not watched that show, what is wrong with you? It is literally, in my opinion, one of the best shows ever made. And there's so many seasons to watch. And then Better Call Saul is just like this different but kind of the same awesome spin-off. They're both great. Next level. What do you both think of Elden Ring? Is it a 10 out of 10 experience for you? I think we've talked about this already.
Yeah.
No, it's not 10 out of 10 for either of us.
It's not a 10 out of 10 experience. It's really good, but...
Yeah. I've never given a 10 out of 10 in my entire career. I would love to play the game that I hope before I die, I play a game that I believe is a 10 out of 10.
My neighbors definitely know it's not a 10 out of 10 experience for me.
Here's a funny one. Zed Saber, what's your favorite hoagie from a sandwich shop?
Yeah.
First of all, you called it a hoagie. Mm-hmm. And that, like, nobody here calls things hoagies.
No.
Like, that's an East Coast thing.
Yeah. There's submarine
sandwiches, yeah. Or just a sandwich.
Or a sandwich, yeah. I would imagine you would call it a grinder.
No, they call it hoagies back on the East Coast. In fact,
where are they grinders? I thought that was like a Philly thing.
I think a grinder is a very specific kind of sandwich where they literally grind the meat up.
Okay.
I think it's like lamb that's like ground up for a grinder. But on the East Coast, they call them hoagies. And in fact, in high school, I had a friend whose nickname was Hoagie. I still don't know where he got it, but he never got a date. I felt so bad for him. I'm like, that's the worst nickname you could have, Hoagie. But anyway. Another one from Next Level. This is a good one. What is going on with the lack of games from Xbox this year? I mean,
the pipeline's not there yet.
It's just not. The pipeline's not full yet. And as we just talked about with Undead Labs, and some studios are having issues like Hellblade. Where the hell's that game?
Yeah, you want to talk about finding the game? I think that's happening there
too. So there are a couple examples of where I'm like, hey, what the hell's going on there? But for the most part, like the acquisitions, like end of the year, next year. Once we get to next year, you're golden forever. Mm-hmm. You're golden forever. Well, I think we knew this year was going to be a little rough. They had a great year last year, though. They won Platform of the Year from both Matt and I in our Game of the Year awards. But this year, agreed, it has been barren. But you got Game Pass keeping things afloat.
Even with Game Pass, it's been pretty sparse.
Tough. Yeah, I hear you. So if you're someone who bought an Xbox Series X instead of a PS5 and you don't have a PS5.
It's still definitely, as we say, the daily driver.
Yeah.
You know, I've played Tiny Tina and Star Wars and Elden Ring on it, and that's all been great. I did have to repair my Elite controller this week.
Oh yeah.
My the left bumper was off and weird. I mean, I was like, okay, I'd probably pressed this bumper 1,000 or more times to cast spells in Elden Ring in the course of the last week and a half. So yeah, sure. And so I ordered a repair kit for it. I opened the thing up, and turns out those bumpers at the top are all connected by a thin plastic piece, and the left bumper snapped off that piece. It just stressed enough that it snapped, and that's why it felt loose. But it was still working. It was still held in because of the tightness of the construction. So I had to take it apart, put a new piece in, close it up. It looks like new now.
Matt, that's what you get for spending over $100 on a controller.
Yeah, well, you notice I didn't just go buy another one, did I? I got a $20 repair kit and saved that shit.
It should have lasted longer than that. You spend that kind of money.
I mean, I've had that controller for years. For a long time.
Yeah.
But I did press that bumper button a lot in the past month.
Yep.
Probably more than in the rest of the life of the controller combined.
Ian Esquire, he dropped some bits and then he asked a question. That's how you should all do it. I'm kidding. When's the next batch of Pack Fac happening? It's happening right now. We are asking for questions right now. In fact, go ask a question right now, Ian Esquire. You can ask it on sifted.net. You can't miss it. It's like the top story on the website right now. You can go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/siftedgames, and click the community tab. You can ask it there. You can follow us on Twitter @siftedgames. We put out a tweet yesterday asking for questions. A million places to do it. In fact, everyone, when this stream closes in like a minute or two, which it is going to, go ask a question for Pact or Factor right now, because we have a day left before we shoot. We're shooting on Thursday, which means that probably the first episode from the new batch will be live on Friday for all our patrons. So there you go. Let's see. We'll take one more. Mellowak, I'm telling you right now, Shane, if you include any part of the main characters, everybody's going to get it right away. LOL. I'm not even sure what he's talking about there.
In the screenshots for... You're still in the part where you're talking about Name That Game.
Name That Game. Gotcha. Okay. Oh, okay. We'll finish with this one. Oh, The Legacy. Thank you for Twitch Prime, brother. Has Matt seen Morbius? That movie is getting lit up. You haven't seen it?
I will not see that until I can see it for free or something. I mean, it's just Sony garbage.
Uh-huh. Is that really true? Is that what it is? It's just more Sony movie garbage?
Yeah, it's not MCU. It's just Sony trying to use their stupid villain solo thing. It's like Venom, except this one doesn't have Tom Hardy doing a tour de force comedic like back and forth performance with his own head. It's Jared Leto being a dick. You see the thing where the director, there was a bizarre interview with the director yesterday, or or the day before, where he was talking about like the interviewer asked, like, there were rumors that like they had to do a thing because Leto was being so method about playing Morbius that he was like using a cane to limp to the bathroom between takes. And it was taking it was taking him like 45 minutes to get back and forth to pee. And so finally the crew like made a compromise with him and said, we'll just push you in a wheelchair so you can get there and back like faster, so we're not wasting so much time. And the guy asked him, is that true? And the directors just said yes.
Wow.
Like, and then had a follow-up thing about it. Oh, he's so passionate about it and very dedicated.
Right.
It's like, dude, yeah, totally worth it, wasn't it? Like, as Laurence Olivier said to Hoffman in Marathon Man, why don't you just try acting, dear boy?
Yeah.
And there was another thing where they started talking about like the Vulture being brought in, through the multiverse thing and what that's all about, because they've talked about the post-credit scenes already for like the director talked directly about like it's like they desperately want you to go see that movie. Like they're not keeping anything under wraps. And they're like, well, why? How did he end up there with it? And he's like, oh, well, basically the guy gave Sony credit for inventing the multiverse because Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. And I'm like, no, that's been a concept in comics for like longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
Dude. Like, I don't think you can give Sony credit for that. And they're like, well, and then like also like they're like, how come like Vulture proposes teaming up against Spider-Man at the end of the movie when Spider-Man hasn't been involved with anything and didn't do anything to Morbius, and as far as we know, Morbius doesn't dislike Spider-Man at all. And he's like, well, I think that's a thing you maybe put in another movie later to explain that. And it's just like, really? Like, you just don't know, do you? Also, like, in Venom doesn't know who Spider-Man is. Like, Spider-Man has not existed in this universe. Like, when at the end of Venom 2, where the suit shows him the shot of Spider-Man from the MCU, he's like, who's that? Like, they don't know who that is. And the only reason the Venom suit knows about it is because the Venom symbiotes have knowledge of the multiverse from their like king of symbiotes or something. And so now all of a sudden, I guess there is a Spider-Man in the Sony verse, and we're gonna go with that. Oh, look, man, it's not performing particularly well.
It's doing terrible, and critics have railed it.
Oh, it's got the lowest. I think it's the lowest Metacritic score of any superhero movie since like the Fantastic Four, Josh Trank disaster. And then beyond that, I mean, the next one, they're already shooting Kraven, and I can't even imagine what a Kraven the Hunter solo movie like. No one even cares about that character. Barely. When he's in the
Morbius,
Spider-Man
I didn't
book.
care about it at all.
No, Morbius is an extremely obscure cut too. Like I've been reading comics since 1979. I have never read a solo Morbius story.
Yeah,
like
I think they're just running out of characters.
It's not that
they're
not running out. It's all they have the rights to. You're dealing.
Gotcha.
They don't need to consult with Marvel Studios for the rights to use the villains because they have the Spider-Man license that covers all that. So they can use that or Black Cat or Silver Sailor. So the next one's that, and then after that they're doing Madam Web. I bet you don't even know who that is.
I don't. Yeah.
Madam Web actually did show up in Shattered Dimensions.
Oh,
in the video game, Spider-Man, or like the 4 Spider-Man come together.
Yeah.
She's the weird old lady in the chair in the middle of the void that is like orchestrating all of it. That's Madam Web. And so this rumor is that this new movie is going to basically be their version of Doctor Strange, which does like the whole multiverse thing, and that might be where they pull in a Spider-Man from another multiverse to be part of their universe. And the rumor is that they're going to try to get Andrew Garfield to do that. Which would be nice to see Andrew Garfield get a second shot at the role, because I think he was very good in No Way Home, and he's got a good Spider-Man in him. It's just that the movies he was in were garbage. But I don't think the movies he'd be in now would be anything different, because it's still Sony calling the shots.
Okay.
And the upshot is, at some point, Disney finally needs to write Sony like a $5 billion check.
Just get rid of them.
And just get Spider-Man back.
Buy him out. Yeah.
Well, and also keep in mind that because of the way the contract works, if someone else buys Sony, the Spider-Man rights automatically revert back to Marvel.
Oh.
And the reason
That's an angle.
Which is interesting. And everyone's like, oh my God, why would you agree to that deal? The reason you agree to that deal is because it makes you less attractive as an acquisition.
Right, yeah.
You don't want someone to buy you.
Yeah.
You put that in there. And so it's like, oh, if you buy us, you don't get the thing that makes us $1 billion every 3 years.
Yeah.
So it makes them a less... Because otherwise you're just left with the Uncharted movies, and nobody wants that.
Okay, that's it for GameFace 295. Thanks to everyone who was on the chat and watched the show all the way through. You guys are awesome. You asked great questions at the end. I did see someone ask about Twitch Prime, how to do it. go to, again, youtube.com/siftedgames. Go to any episode of GameFace or Pactor Factor, and there are step-by-step instructions on how to hook up Twitch Prime. It's like a 3-step process to do it the first time. Once you've done that, you never have to do it again. You just go to twitch.tv/siftedgames and just click the drop-down on the right, and at the very bottom of the drop-down, you just select free subscription with Twitch Prime, and that gives us a free $2.50 every month. But you do have to go and re-up it. However, if you watch the live stream here on Twitch, you're going to be reminded to go and do it because everyone else is doing it. So once you go through that, and I admit it is a pain in the ass to sign up for the first time, after you do that, you're golden, and it's just clicking basically one button from then on. And we'd really appreciate if you do that. Again, it's if you have Amazon Prime, you can give us free money, and we really need it right now. We'd appreciate it. But really, the best thing you can do is go to patreon.com/sifted and drop a pledge there. And that will automatically renew every month. For $4 a month, you get all our content early, except for Good Morning Gaming. However, as a patron, you have the exclusive on the podcast feed of Good Morning Gaming, which is how you should consume the show. I designed the show to be in your podcast feed, sitting on your phone when you wake up in the morning, and then you can listen to it as you're getting ready to go to work or as you're commuting to work. And I've got a lot of feedback from people who are like, that's exactly how I listen to the show, and I love it for that. And again, that is exclusive to patrons. We do publish it for free on YouTube to hook up our YouTube fam when we can. But I think that's it. Another awesome episode. Thanks to everyone who watched on the stream. Thanks to all our patrons who make this possible. We'll be back here next Tuesday at twitch.tv/siftedgames. We're here every week at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Until then, GameFace is up and out.